Hello, everyone. It's good to be back live with you once again. Thank you for joining me here on Whiskey on the West Coast. And it has been a while since we've been live. It has been a hot minute, as some would say. And I'm just excited to be back talking whiskey with you guys live here on the weekend. It's always nice to enjoy a few drams on the weekend. And today I'm going to be talking about my honeymoon trip to Scotland. I'm going to be talking about all the whiskeys that I can remember that I tried on our trip to Scotland, as well as some of the whiskeys that are either related to the places that we visited, the distilleries that we toured, or related to some of the whiskeys that we tried there. If you saw my video of what I bought in Scotland, unboxing that, showing you guys what I brought home to Canada, then you might be familiar with some of the whiskeys, some of the places that I went to. But what we're going to start with is just welcoming people to the chat, saying hi, and then we're going to get into how we wound up in Scotland, a few whiskeys that are related to that matter. And then as well, we'll get right into the trip and everything that we tried while we were there. So let's welcome some people into the chat. I saw some people in early, which is always nice to see. Donner Pass, hello, welcome here, buddy. Good to have you here. Greg, you're saying it's hot in Paris, so no alcoholic drink in the menu, but curious of you're all announcing here, previewed in your latest video. Greg, I've experienced the Paris heat, and yeah, I don't blame you for not drinking alcohol today. It can be stifling, buddy. Thank you for being here. Welcome here, bud. We got lots to catch up on. Donna Pass saying hi to Greg, talking about the weather down in Northern California. They're still waiting for the hot weather, and it snowed on the Donner Pass. I mean, you never know what you're going to get on the Donner Pass. That's my understanding of it, at least. We've also got Smear Gel checking in from Finland. Happy midsummer there, Smear Gel. I saw you celebrated with that long row 18-year-old on the longest day of the year. I mean, perfect. That's perfection. I don't know if you can get much better than that. Welcome here, buddy. Good to have you here. Four Leaf Whiskey, our Irish whiskey expert. Welcome here, Four Leaf. Good to have you. Cheers. Always great to have Stacy in the chat. Whiskey and Wine Trails. Cheers, Matt. Looking forward to hearing about your trip. Thanks for joining us here, buddy. It's always good to see you pop into the chat and following along on the videos and commenting. And thanks for being patient with me, guys, on the comments on the videos. That's always the hardest thing to keep up with, but that's the next thing on the list here. It's Four Leaf Whiskey, having a drop of Irish poitín. Poitín? Is it poitín? Oh man, I shouldn't even try to pronounce the word there, but I think it's poitín. Poitín. I'm making a fool of myself now. Welcome here. Glad you got something in your glass. All right. So down to business, because we got a lot of ground to cover. I don't want to dilly-dally too much. I know, Smear Jelly, you have to leave the live stream in less than an hour. You're working tonight. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna make tracks here. We're gonna make tracks. And yeah, Donner Pass is in my time zone here. 11 a.m. cold brew coffee. Yeah, exactly. I had a coffee this morning as we were setting up and getting ready to go. Scotland 2025. What I tried in Scotland and opening some of the bottles I brought home, as well as some things that are related to the bottles I brought home. Now, why did we go to Scotland? We were in Scotland in 2023, and we weren't expecting to go to Scotland for quite some time. And so we were quite surprised to have this opportunity, but we were faced with a decision on where to go for our honeymoon. We'd always planned it would be Hawaii, but things happened, things got weird, and south of the 49th parallel, and we decided that we're going to go back to a place that we both love and just both discovered for the first time ourselves, and that was Scotland. And yeah, Greg, no, that's a thumbnail. Yeah, I think it's a good one. I think it's great. And yeah, those are just a taste of some of the whiskeys that we brought back there. Now, how did we get to Scotland? What happened? Well, we had a wedding to attend, our wedding, and so we actually only just got some pictures back this week from our wedding. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday we got them back from the photographer. And so we've been just trying to take them all in and appreciate them. But that's the first photo that we posted there from our wedding photos. And why I yeah, finally with my cap off. Yeah, no hats on the wedding, Greg. No hats on the wedding. Oh man. Yeah. th- when I'm casual, I'm wearing a cap. When we got something going on, yeah, I gotta take them off. So there's a few whiskeys I want to talk about from our wedding itself, and one of them is the one right in the middle there. And that is a whiskey I was given by Macaloney's Caledonian distiller. And it's not Caledonia anymore. Macaloney's Island Distillery in Victoria, Vancouver Island. I've worked with them at festivals in the past, pouring whiskey. And out of the blue, the global whiskey ambassador for Macaloney's, Richard Blanchard. Rich is just such a fantastic guy, man. He's he's a great mate, and man, yeah, I can't say enough good things about Rich. If you ever get a chance to meet him, he knows his whiskey. He's represented a lot of brands in the past. He has a real passion for whiskey and sharing it with people. And so he sent us this custom Macaloney's bottle, customized label in the mail that has my name, Kyla's name, our wedding date of May the 4th, and then to mark the joyous union of us. And so that was a really cool thing that Richard did. And that's actually what I got in my glass to start off here. I'll show you on camera. Perhaps it's a little bit easier to see. It's got the Whiskey on the West Coast logo on either side there, and all the information about our wedding. We had a decision to make. We were like, well, do we just hold on to this whiskey and then open it up on an anniversary, or is this something that we're going to share on our wedding day? And that's what we decided to do. We decided, you know what, this whiskey is to mark our wedding. It's to mark that special day, and we're gonna open it up and share it with all the people that came to our wedding. So I had this wedding on the bar at the reception dinner, as well as two other whiskeys to share with people, and that was just I was so glad people were really enjoying this stuff. This is from a Portuguese red wine barrique. I believe it's a STR red wine barrique. It doesn't say on the label. And honestly, at this point, it's just about enjoying a great whiskey. But berries, red berries, like baker's chocolate, healthy dose of caramel, almost like tiramisu. Really lovely on the nose. I think I've only had two or three drams of this. Like people at the wedding really cranked into this whiskey, and I think it's because it's super approachable. It's kind of what I equate to the house style for Macaloney's, these Portuguese red wine barriques. They are from the same source, same provider as Cavallan's red wine barriques. So the casks Cavallan uses for their Vino barrique, that's what they use for these. It's because they have the same connections through Jim Swan back in the day to provide them with these casks. Yeah, gorgeous nose, bit of orange peel, I would say. Some roasted coffee on the palate, orange, dried cranberry, bit of raisin. It's nice malt coming through, almost like roasted malts, kind of like what you get on the back end of like a nice stout or porter. Um, yeah, really beautiful whiskey. I was so glad to be able to share this really special whiskey at our wedding, and thank you so much to Rich, the Macaloney's brand ambassador, and just a great friend. Thank you, buddy. This was beautiful. I'm gonna keep sharing it around to people, but that was quite special. So thank you so much. So when we're talking about how we got to Scotland, I had to address some of the whiskey from our wedding. Mm, we'll set that aside for now. As I go ahead and talk about a couple more whiskeys from our wedding. Now, I said I had three whiskeys on the bar. Before we got to the actual wedding itself, I went on a sturgeon fishing trip with some of my family from Nova Scotia, from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. They came out and for the wedding, and I wanted to make sure they had a special experience. So we took them sturgeon fishing on the Fraser River. I'm a big fisherman. They're lobster fishermen, so it makes a lot of sense. on the boat, I brought a whiskey to share, a couple of them, but one in particular that we bottle killed on the boat, and it's one that I love. I know some people think that a younger version of it is better, but this one right here, we bottle killed in a boat on the Fraser River, a river boat, jet boat, and that is the Glendronach 21-year-old Parliament. This whiskey is bottled 48%. At the time, I believe it was natural color. I don't have any submissions on the chill filtration. But what I do know is this is the 2020 batch of the Glendronach Parliament 21-year-old. This whiskey was just so Moorish, so old school, so incredibly oh gosh, off deer. Like it was all old woods varnish, wood polish, like sultanas, orange, and just like when you'd have a sip, you knew you were going to just sit with that for 3 or 5 minutes staring out at the river and the mountains, and you could not wait to get back to another dram after that resolved. Really fantastic whiskey, the Glendronach 21-year-old Parliament. That bottle there, I do believe is, it has overaged, whiskey in it. It's either 23 or 24 years old. I believe actually 24 years old in the 2020. I have an open batch of the 2019. I've done some comparisons on the two. There are fairly close in quality. I actually like the younger 2019 release better, I think. But I should mention this bottle was actually gifted to me from a friend of the channel. Um, out in Calgary. Passes through because he's originally from this part of British Columbia. He passes through to visit his family. We've stopped a few times to share drams on the Veta River, and that was Watchman 999. So thank you so much, Greg Watchman 999, for donating. I think it was almost half full when you gave this to me, my friend. So thank you so much for that. I made sure to share it with people that were special in my life, and that just felt like the right thing to do with the whiskey that you're given in that way. Yeah, a lot of people, seem to suggest that the Glendronach 18 is kinda like the Goldilocks zone in the Glendronach, like the old Billy Walker-esque bottlings, not so much like with the rebrands now. I think I've only had the 18 once, and I did find it quite nice, but no submissions if it's better than the 21-year-old. I really wouldn't be a good judge of that because I haven't had a full bottle. I will say that I'm not paying the prices for the Glendronach 21-year-olds anymore. They're too expensive. They're up like $430 Canadian now. I picked up my bottles when it was about $250, and that was only back in like 2020, 250, 260. To have gone up that much, it's too much, but lovely whiskey. And yeah, just stonking stuff. One more whiskey I want to mention from the wedding, and we might come back to this one at the end of the live stream because it's a bit of a beast, but it's a classy beast. Which my wedding, classy beast. I feel like that's very very suitable. We had Springbank 10 on the bar as well. Had some Springbank, but the one I'm speaking of is this beauty, and that is the Port Ascaig 25-year-old from Elixir Distillers, bottled at 45.8% ABV, non-chill filtered, natural color. This was bottled back in 2019. There's only 3,000 bottles of this made. Um, it's still for sale in my market. It feels like it's been slow dripped into my market over and over and over again. It runs about $400, but I got my bottle for under 300. And when I was thinking about whiskeys that I wanted to share with people on my wedding day, I was like, I want to bring something that's really quite special, especially for people who love peat. I have a lot of friends who really love that smoky style of whiskey. So I brought this out. So this one here, yeah, give you a better look at the bottle here. 25-year-old Kalila is what this is. Port Ascaig is the nearest harbor, the ferry terminal to the Kalila distillery. They're the nearest distillery to the ferry terminal, I should say. And in this case, that is a good hint as to what this is. Port Ascaigs aren't always Kalila, and I can talk about that in regards to the Port Ascaig 28-year-old. But this bottle's lovely. If you can see the fill level, if it comes through there at all, it's right around here on the bottle. I had a couple mates just tear into this bottle, and it is beautiful. So at the end, because this is quite peated, obviously being Kalila, I might pour that as the last dram on the live stream today to give you guys an idea. But this bottle is great value for right around $300. I think that's almost like 2019 pricing. Honestly, I don't think it's gone up much in my market since then. But I'm just surprised. Run of 3,000 bottles still on shelves. There's a similar whiskey, the Portiskeag 28-year-old, which I do understand is actually early 1990s Lafroig. And that is my favorite in the Portiskeag range right now. And it's only a little bit more than this Portiskeag 25-year-old. That 28-year-old, I have both open. I opened them with friends at Christmas. I'm going to hopefully do a review of those. Maybe I'll do it together. Maybe I'll do it separate. But I've been on quite a tear of secret Lafroigs, early 1990s Lafroigs, and I love them. But these are the whiskeys that kind of kicked off our wedding and kicked off our honeymoon in that way. So we'll set this Portiskeag aside for now. We might come back to that if you guys are interested in hearing some tasting notes on that. All right, we'll check in with the chat here, and then we'll move on to what you're actually here for, the Scotland portion of all this. Checking in the chat. I think I saw something from Greg here suggesting that Macaloni's bottle could be a very nice infinity bottle. I suggest once it's finished, in order to keep a bit of its magic and event reference, make it an infinity bottle. Yeah, that's the plan, Greg. We're going to make that, at least at the beginning, a Macaloni's infinity bottle, and then just go loose with it. And Cavalan, great reference. Yeah, it is interesting that these Jim Swan distilleries, sometimes they have similarities in their distillate cuts and the way the distillate's made. You know, made to be very fruity, made to age be drinkable at a very young age. There's a great article on Dramface covering Jim Swan distilleries. I think it was by Brody Balfour. Check that out if you can, because it really is a fascinating read. Actually, it could have been Tyree. So I'm just going to say, check out the Dramface article that covers Jim Swan distilleries if you have a few minutes. Donner Pass. We'll be interested to see if Macaloni's is hanging on to some of their first casts to do a 10 or 12-year release at some point. Don't know how long they've been going. Yeah, I believe they've been going since 2017. Around that. I really should know that. And I swear I have in the past. I would love to see some older liquid come out from them. I know their bottles are getting older that they are releasing. Typically it's around 4.5, I think, years old is what they've been releasing lately. It'd be great to get an age statement from Macaloni's, wouldn't it? Vaz Vegas. Hi, Matt. Nice to catch you live. Nice to catch you on here, buddy. Welcome here. Thanks for joining us. Donner Pass says, recently opened his Glendronach 18 2019. That is 26 years old, and it's amazing. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. That 18 release with that overaged whiskey. I mean, yeah, I believe the rumors about it. I could see that being true for sure. Let's see here. And on that price there, current Glendronach 18 is $260 US. Not going to happen here. Yeah. No, the prices are out of hand. They're too much now. Way too much. Smear Gel, you're talking whiskey before shipping. I'm not sure I get that question there, but maybe the price before shipping? All the prices I was talking about were not including shipping. Yeah, oftentimes I have whiskey mules in Alberta that visit the Fraser Valley here quite often, and they bring things back for us. Oh, that actually might have been in reference to the cost for Donner Pass there. Greg, with some submissions on Portiskeag, the 17-year-old is beautiful, subtle, on my wish list. I did hear from Roy that one was quite excellent as well. So I'm watching out for that to see how much it is when it comes to my market as well there, Greg. Meki wants a Susan appearance. Susan's sleeping. She's not up right now. She's being a bit lazy, so Susan's gonna stay in bed. I think we're not gonna see Susan again on the channel. Michael Torres, you're basically doing whiskey pilgrimage, and we're all here living it through your glass. Amazing stuff. Cheers from Brazil. Thank you so much, Michael. That's Anytime you go to Scotland, yeah, it's a bit of a whiskey pilgrimage, and I think we'd all feel the same way when we're heading there. So lift this glass up to you. Cheers, buddy. Mm, yeah, yeah, that's how you feel about Susan Mackey, I'm sure. Have a great day, buddy. Enjoy your Sunday. Cheers, bud. And has anyone here visited Suntory Yamazaki Distillery by chance? I mean, I would love to go to Japan and visit some of those distilleries, especially to get up to Hokkaido. Maybe visit Yoichi and Akeshi. Get down south, visit Chichibu. That'd be fantastic. And Kyla has something to say about Susan. To be clear, Susan doesn't stay in a bed. Okay, okay. Enough about Susan. All right, let's move on to Scotland. We started our trip in Edinburgh. Here's a few photos from our first few days in Edinburgh. Right there, we have the view of Edinburgh Castle, Princess Street Gardens. We have a view of Edinburgh and the Royal Mile from Calton Hill. And we have another shot there. The one at the bottom, I'm not sure the actual direction of the view there, but you can see we had fantastic weather. We had the most amazing weather that I think we could have ever asked for. It was actually a historic drought in Scotland, and we had like 24-degree days, full sun. I think we had only 2 hours of rain the entire trip, and that rain was actually when I was standing outside in line at a distillery in Campbell Town. So yeah, really fantastic, fantastic weather. And the first stop we made, because it was in our neighborhood, and some may judge, stick with me here. I stopped into the Johnny Walker Experience, and the Johnny Walker Experience. If you can see the photos here, hopefully they're big enough for you to see on your screen. The Johnny Walker Experience is exactly what you would imagine it to be. It's got that high street fancy kind of air of excess, and just it feels like it's geared not towards whiskey lovers or whiskey nerds, but people who like fancy things. You can see it's really quite a spectacle inside the actual showroom. What I will say is they're very happy to pour you samples of whiskeys that they have for sale there, like the new Black Ruby, which there's a review on Dram Face of the Black Ruby. I found it unspectacular, but not a bad whiskey. Not something I was going to pack in my luggage and bring back to Canada, that was for sure. Um, but what they do have there that I found kind of interesting, I was like, okay, if someone was visiting only Edinburgh, perhaps this is something that they might want to consider. Is well, they have tours. They take you through the history of Johnny Walker. I didn't do a tour. There's a rooftop bar where you can get cocktails or straight pours, neat pours of whiskey. But what they did have was this station here where you can bottle your own Johnny Walker. And they have these expressions that seem to be seasonally tied. They're either like spring, summer, or autumn, winter. These sorts of things. I tried both. They were actually both decent drams. They're at elevated ABV. I think they were somewhere in around like 51, 52% ABV. They actually weren't bad whiskeys. Again, nothing that I felt moved to bring home with me to Canada. And for the record, I would bring a lot more whiskey back home to Canada if I could, but with whiskey importation rules being what they were, we're only allowed to actually bring back 1.14 liters of whiskey each, which works out to just about, well, I guess it is exactly 2.28 liters of whiskey. So that's 3 bottles between the two of us. I brought home a lot more than that, and I was very lucky not to have to pay duty on that. But I brought home 9 bottles plus samples plus vials plus miniatures. Um, I was far, far exceeding my limit, and I was lucky not to have to pay duty. So I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, first Scotch whiskey I had in Scotland was a Johnny Walker, which maybe I should feel shame for that. But Johnny Walker is a relatively important piece of whiskey history, and yeah, I was interested to see what they had. It was right beside where we were staying, so made sense to me. In Edinburgh, a few of the places we visited. Number one, we visited Royal Mile Whiskey. And if you haven't, that's one of the best whiskey shops in Edinburgh or in even the country. Royal Mile Whiskey has just such a selection, and they are really truly whiskey experts. So if you're going to Edinburgh, you got to visit Royal Mile Whiskey on the Royal Mile, very near Edinburgh Castle. It is, yeah, it's a great place to be. And they were actually uh, had a brand rep for Ballindollig, a Speyside distillery up near Glenfarclas and the Speyside and Ballindollig. Uh, they're a relatively new distillery, though. I think they have 10-year-old whiskey at this point. And they're launching this whiskey here, which is a single malt. I think it was in around, I shouldn't guess the age, but I think it was about 5, 6 years old. And it was in combination with a mystery, like a crime novel. And they had the author there, they had the whiskey there, and the brand rep for the whiskey. And this is actually, I think it's a happy accident for them because it was a whiskey that was supposed to be aged in ex bourbon casks, but they realized later that they were actually ex peated whiskey casks. So they were ex Isla casks or ex peated whiskey casks of some sort. They had no idea they had peated whiskey casks, refill casks. They filled into them. And when they opened up, they went, oh, we've got something unique that we did not actually intend. And whiskey mistakes actually so often wound up being kind of happy accidents. And in this case, this one it was quite a lovely little whiskey. Um, the price on it was quite dear. It was, I think, closer to 75 pounds. And for that, I thought it was actually quite it was priced too high. It was too expensive. So it wasn't even a temptation for me. I'd love to try more Ballandolic whiskey. I think it honestly could be quite nice liquid in those bottles, but the prices on some of the bottles definitely chased me away, at least on this one. Uh, Even closer to Edinburgh Castle, there is an old pub. You wouldn't guess it, but it's one of the better spots to grab a dram in Edinburgh. It's close to Edinburgh Castle, but they don't charge an extra premium on their pours, on their whiskey, on their food, just because they're close to the castle. So it's not a tourist trap. And this bar is the Ensign Ewerts. And I've been there before. They usually have break-even bottles on the bar where they're selling the drams at cost. And this bottle here is a Thompson Brothers Sutherland 5-year-old whiskey. And the Sutherland is a blended malt of Kleinleash, the 5-year-old Dornoch from the Dornoch Distillery, Thompson Brothers' own distillery, as well as a small splash. We don't really know how much, but it is small, of Brora. So we have the three different Sutherland distilleries all in one bottle, hence the Sutherland blend. It has fantastic branding on it with the cat, the Highland Wildcat logo up there. The big five. I love the old school labeling. I would have grabbed a bottle of that if I found it on a shelf. I know it's been reasonably priced. I think it was available at K&L Wines in California, Donner Pass. If I don't know if they still have it, but I know they are one of the few that get Thompson Brothers, or otherwise known as Redacted Brothers, in California. Great whiskey. I really enjoyed it. It definitely profiled very much along the lines of a nice like ex-bourbon Kleinleash, but with just a little more interest, a little bit more I wouldn't say peat, but like a more rustic edge. I would have loved to actually have more time to enjoy it, but great pour. I was very happy with it. I think I paid like £7 for a pour of that. Awesome, awesome stuff. And then one more here from my time on the Royal Mile. There is the Cadenhead's whiskey shop on the other end of the Royal Mile towards Holyrood Palace. And they have, usually they have the latest bottles from their outturns, as well as some demi-john, some living kind of cask sort of bottlings that you can buy. So you can fill your own, or you can buy 100 mil, 200 mil, or 700 milliliter bottlings of them. They have ex-bourbon, they have a peated, they have a sherried. They might even have more than that. But really some really cool bottles, some really cool finds in there, like an old 25-year-old Potter's Canadian whiskey for 80 pounds. They had that in the shop. They had a 10-year-old Irish whiskey in there as well. But one of the things I did, because I wanted some whiskey to just like when we're hiking up Arthur's Seat, when we're hiking up Calton Hill, when we're having a seat, I had a mini Glencairn in my backpack. I wanted to be able to pour a little whiskey. So I know a lot of the shops on the Royal Mile charge a dear price for the whiskey, and they are charging for what tourists will be willing to pay because they don't know any better. Cadenheads has all their whiskey. It's all at a very fair price. Same with Royal Mile. Royal Mile has a fantastic selection. You can't beat their selection. But I wanted something in a small bottle format that I wasn't going to feel like I was being ripped off, just so I could have a nice pour. And this sherried blend was really, it was savory, it was sweet, very Moorish. I ripped through that bottle before we left Edinburgh, that 100 mils right there, 10 centiliters. I remember drinking that fondly on Calton Hill and looking down the city with Kyla. Really, that is one of the things I'd say is like, if you're in Edinburgh and you have a backpack with you, you can carry whiskey pretty much wherever you want to go, which is what I've done both times. And in this case, I think this was maybe like 12, 15 pounds for this little 100 ml bottle. It was really quite reasonable. And I enjoyed it quite a lot. I didn't bring back a full bottle with me, but it really was quite enjoyable. I'm just going to check in with the chat here. Let's see. Lots of talk about it looked like Japanese whiskey, Yamazaki in particular. Oh. Yeah. All right. Donner Pass would love to see some Hakushu. Actually visited the distillery. It's beautiful evergreen forest mountain area. And yeah, Greg agrees the pics of Hakushu are unique. I would love to see Japan. That is one of the places I'd love to even go walking. There's a pilgrimage route you can walk to Shinto temples all around Japan. And as someone who's walked to the Camino de Santiago and has walked long distances, about 900 kilometers across Spain, I'd love to see Japan in that way. Smirjel, he's asking because you got a chance to visit Japan for 2 weeks. Looking at the map of Osaka and saw there was Suntory Distillery there, thinking it's worth a visit. Oh man, Smirjel, that's an exciting opportunity. Yeah, look up, say, Chichibu. Look up, oh gosh, I mean, you guys know I love Yoichi. I love Akeshi. Yeah, I think you'll find lots of fertile ground for whiskey distilleries to visit. Also, whiskey bars. There's fantastic whiskey bars in Japan. I have a chat group that is very plugged into the Japanese whiskey scene. I might be able to just add you to that group. They would be able to give you all the suggestions on where to go in Japan. But yeah, that's exciting. Let me know if you actually wind up going. That is really cool. All right. Yeah, lots to talk about Yamazaki. Oh my word. What are you talking? Kirby. Welcome here, Kirby, by the way. Good to see you, buddy. You're showing off your Highland Park 27-year-old Gordon McPhails in a chat earlier today. It's only $3,000 for the 18-year-old 100th anniversary. I'm guessing Yamazaki. Yeah, see, this is what makes people kind of sweat and get pretty nervous with Japanese whiskey. Those prices are quite high. Not something I'm ever going to be able to afford. And let's see, just checked one of the lowest shop price in France for the regular Yamazaki 18 is 950 euros, to which this is the only appropriate answer. Kirby, yikes. Yeah, that is oof. I hope you're enjoying that Yoichi 10-year-old there, Kirby. I think you picked up a backup bottle of it too. I'm considering that, but there's only so much money to go around. And yeah, Friday night, broke 6-month fast, not buying bottles, ordered a Longmorn 18 cask strength from K&L. K&L is a fantastic whiskey shop, from all the drooling I've done from perusing their online whiskey shelves. Like, man, they get some great deals and they get some great bottles. They always have some interesting cask picks. Yeah. Michael Torres in Brazil, still at the beginning of my peated whiskey journey, but every dram pulls me deeper into the smoke. There's no turning back now. Yeah, you're done for. No use resisting. And Greg, yeah, big fan of Yoichi, and I have almost only old stock from them, plus the current non-age statement. You've got some special Yoichi bottles, like a certain SMWS bottle, if I remember correctly there, Greg. And then you have very nice, lots of pears on the nose on the Yoichi 10. Lastly, comment, Whiskey Exchange has the Yama 18 for £600. Ooh, boy, is that worse than the 950 €? I'm not sure what the conversion. I know Canadian conversion into pounds is ridiculous right now. It's like $1.90, which hit us pretty hard on our trip. Speaking of our trip, moving back to that, this lovely bar here is actually something I missed on my last trip to Scotland. I visited the Scotch Whiskey Experience. They do tours, they have a whiskey museum, lots of really cool bottles, all these sorts of things. And they also have a fantastic bottle shop where you can buy whiskeys from pretty much almost every distillery in the country, minus ones like Springbank. But what I didn't know is their bar and restaurant area down below is actually quite a little hidden gem. And the reason for this is because they're subsidized by the industry. They're subsidized by actual Scotch Whiskey Association and the different brands that I guess put money into this venture to be kind of like a whiskey ambassador in Edinburgh to the world. And this bar, most of the bottles are actually pretty close to cost for the pours, for the prices on them. And so two of the whiskeys I tried at this bar while Kyla was drinking some wine were this Living Souls 40-year-old blended Scotch whiskey. That was like 41.7, 41.2, something around that range, ABV. Um, that was a parcel of casks, or at least a single cask that was moved into a sherry cask around the year 2000, I believe, and then just let it sat. And there's some word online as to what's inside of it. Um, Maybe I can find that and put that in the chat. I will say I was really excited for this. I'm really excited about Living Souls. They are coming to Canada. They do have an importer bringing them in now. And the second batch, I believe, of this is the one that's coming to Canada. It's a little bit different. You can see it has a different ABV. So really intrigued by that. This bottle is about 80 pounds for a 40-year-old blended Scotch. That's a pretty stonking deal. That's a good price. I will say, I'm happy that it's a different batch coming to Canada because I had an opportunity to buy this whiskey and bring it home with me. I left it on the shelf. And that was partially because I didn't know what bottles I was going to find on my trip. But uh it has kind of a weird, funky profile. There's something strange going on with this particular 40-year-old Living Souls. It was very much on candy ginger drops. It was very much on the spicier notes. It was tough to get past that kind of like candied spice note, honey, as well as maybe like some light like toffee, some pears, some apple, and maybe a bit of like lemon zest, but so much on the ginger candies. And then it went a bit floral, almost as if it was a touch soapy. And I like floral lavender, FWP Bowmore. I think it works well with the peat. I wasn't sure it was working with this bottle. It was a very confusing whiskey. It'd be an interesting one to have on a shelf and pour blind for people. I'll say that much. But I am hopeful that I am correct that the next bottling of this Living Souls 40 is a different batch and a different ABV. So that one was pretty cool here. And I know that Kirby, you're talking about that Living Souls 40-year-old in the chat here. I think we're on the same list to have that brought to Canada. I actually was the first. I was the first names on the 99 and 1. The Ledgig with a 18 with a little bit of grain. I was first on that list. I was first, I think, on the blended 40-year-old list as well. You say you have 4 bottles Living Souls coming in November. Yeah, Paul's taking good care of us there in that chat group there, Kirby. I believe the 99 one was under $100 Canadian, and the 220 or 230 for that 40-year-old. But again, really fantastic price. It's actually cheaper than in Scotland. The prices that they're quoting for that. So that's quite something. Yeah. So the other one here, oh, Robert with chiming in on Living Souls bottle of Living Souls 99 to 1 in a Dornoch whiskey shop last night. 99% Legic 18. Exactly. I saw that pop on the list. I put my name down for 2. It's for under $100 Canadian. I'm not sure what you paid for that, Robert. And thanks for joining us, Robert. Good to see you. I got some comments to respond to you from our videos there. I would have loved to visit you up in Dornoch. We didn't get quite that far north. We kind of rushed the end of our trip there. But thanks for checking in. You got that 99 and 1 and yeah, 58 pounds. I mean, what more can we ask for with something like that? That is killer. That is awesome. Glad you grabbed a bottle of that you were able to still find it on shelves. I kept my eye out for that in Scotland. I did not see it anywhere. And Kirby's saying, yeah, you got 2 of those 99 and ones. Yeah, exactly. I think we know what kind of nerdy whiskey we're after there. Speaking of nerdy whiskey, I do love the Morrison um distillers brand, the Mactala branding. I know, Greg, you've had some good experiences with their whiskeys. I, having enjoyed the Strata, I believe there was a 15-year-old Isla that I thought was actually pretty decent for the price. I wanted to try this Flora because I think it was about £6 for a dram, and I just found it odd. It was completely odd. It was a bit floral as well, even more floral than the Living Souls. I wondered if there was something going on with my palate. No, I checked it with that Cadenheads sherry dram. Wasn't my palate. I did not enjoy it at all. I don't think I'm going to be picking up a bottle if it comes to Canada, which was a shame because I had high hopes. I said Flora. Okay, so this is kind of a more floral dram. It warned me that it was a bit more floral. I was thinking, is that like some floral Bowmore? I may be obsessed with FWP floral Bowmore. And because the Morrison Bowmore, Morrison Distillers, that family, they owned Bowmore for a while. I imagine they took some casks of Bowmore with them. Um, yeah, that dram just did not get on with my palate. I finished that dram, and I have more positive things to say about the Living Souls and in the interest that 40-year-old blended Scotch had than the Mactala Flora. Michael Torres, by the way, Matt, I blame you for my sudden obsession with Pete and ferry schedules to Isla. Yeah, you gotta hit those ferry schedules because the breakdowns and just how quickly they fill up. It's tricky, buddy. But I'm glad you can blame me for that. Greg chiming in on the Mactala. Yet to review the Mactala Oloroso, but tried another one, but haven't tried the Flora. Yeah, I'm still watching to see if that Mactala Oloroso comes to Canada. Greg, your review of it was quite spectacular. Oh, not review. What you had to say, I think it was on an Instagram post about that whiskey was quite engaging, and it sparked my interest to just buy it blind on your recommendation. So if I see it, that's a bottle I want to pick up. But I would say try before you buy with the Flora. Definitely try before you buy. All right. One of the bars we went to for dinner is this place which has these golf clubs, these neutered golf clubs. The heads have been cut off, and the ends have been stuck into the roof of this bar. This is Dirty Dick's. It's down, I guess, down Victoria Street, that area, that end of Edinburgh. And I did spy something on their whiskey list that hadn't been cracked open yet. And we cracked open the Longrow 100 proof, which is a combination of ex-bourbon casks and I believe Pinot Noir red wine casks. It's kind of the follow-up to the Longrow Red series. I quite enjoyed my dram. I would pick up a bottle if I found it at a good price over here in Canada. It is non-age stated. I do think it drinks a little bit young, but if you were a big fan of those like diesel fume sort of phenolics that I get in Longrow, along with that like kind of fermented, like overripe, like cantaloupe, melon, and just a lovely peat. I enjoy this whiskey. I think the inclusion of the red wine cask actually was a nice nod to those Longrow Red series. But yeah, I really, yeah, it's definitely something that I think is better than some of the reviews online. I've seen people saying it's young, it's hot. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'd definitely pick it up. And let me just go to the chat here real quickly here. So there's so much on shelves at Calgary for the first time. Never seen it like this before. But somebody told me Ontario they didn't take their order. It makes sense. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I think Greg has a really good point here. Besides, I really don't enjoy the FWP reference coming across as racist, even if when a French like Serge mentions it. but I understand some lavender notes can be overwhelming. Yeah, you know what? Actually, that's a good call, Greg. I should cut that out. Yeah, I think I picked that up from reading a lot of tasting notes that include that reference, but, you're right, it's uncouth and it's, possibly even racist, so apologies for using that, and I'll just use, I think in the future, I should just use, like, Isla Violets. I know that's been used as part of the branding for elixir distillers, but Isla Violets would be actually more appropriate, or lavender, even Thrills Gum or Parma Violets, all better descriptions than that one. So I won't even say it at this point here. Thanks for calling me out on that, though. I do appreciate that because that's a good adjustment to make. Kirby, oh yeah, I see more long row on shelves than ever before. We made a quick layover in Calgary, and I did see long row, and I've seen it on some websites there. But yeah, no, that's definitely a welcome difference. I don't think it's a bad thing ever to have long row on the shelf. Um, yeah, especially after such an absence where it was gone for so long. Back on that Mactala, Olorosa mentioned the pre-reviewed in Instagram is good, but compared to an older indie Bowmore, it loses its interest. He made the comparison. Okay, okay. I mean, still, that's quite a challenge for something new like that to go up against an older indie Bowmore, in my mind. Smear gel. I've seen the long room 100 proof in many stores around the EU for about 70 to 80 euros, sometimes even discounted. I guess not much. Yeah, I think people they liked the age stated long row red range. I think it was a popular range with those who liked that red wine influence. And it's a hard adjustment to go down to something that is partially red wine, um, cask matured or finished, as well as non-age statement. I trust the people over with Springbank enough to grab a bottle. I did enjoy my bottle. I think it's good. I don't think it's amazing. I wouldn't pay over the odds for it. I wouldn't pay secondary for it, but I think it's good. And Greg, no, I know, man, no big deal. Everyone uses it, unfortunately. Yeah, it is something that we should change, though. And Tim Lux, welcome here, buddy. I think you're down in California there. Good to have you back on the live stream. The Longmorn 114 proof is good, available and decent, but not as good or interesting as any of my red expressions. I think maybe not Longmorn, but Long Row, perhaps. I think it was 114 because in the US, you guys do proof a little bit differently. Yeah, awesome. All right, moving on. Getting through Edinburgh here. We did visit one distillery in Edinburgh. It was Holyrood. Been there before. I toured there last time. Learned all about their unique experiments with yeast, with different roasted malts. Really, it's a fantastic little distillery in town there, and something that is very given to experimentation. I ran into one of the Canadian owners, Rob Carpenter, when visiting the tasting room. We didn't go past the tasting room, and this time we didn't have the time. And having toured it before, I didn't feel the pressure to. Tried a few things there, including this Holyrood pitch, which is used. It's made using a high proportion of brewers malt. I believe it's like 72% brewers malts, as well as the inclusion of two different strains or varieties of red wine yeast, which was a really funky idea. It's Oloroso cask matured. It is a young whiskey, but it had some really fascinating flavors. Very nutty, very almost like fusile. It was something that I couldn't quite place because unfortunately they're serving the samples in little plastic cups, so you can't get a good nosing. You can get an idea of the palate. There is another fantastic dram face review on this. I think they gave it quite a high score, but did mention it's a love it or hate it dram. Someone at Royal Mile Whiskies also suggested I try this. When this ships to Canada, which it will eventually arrive in Canada, I'm going to pick up a bottle of this because it falls again into that fascinating kind of just so different it's and weird that it's good sort of column. So I'm going to watch for the Holyrood pitch. I also tried a couple of their single casks, ex bourbon, as well as another one here, which I believe was Oloroso sherry. I did find the prices for their single casks at Edinburgh a bit, at the Holyrood Distillery, a bit high. It was about £95 for a 3-year-old, whiskey from ex-bourbon. I feel like that's a bit too high for my tastes. I did try the ex-bourbon and the sherry. I think I enjoyed the sherried one more than the ex-bourbon. It's a nice souvenir to bring back. Again, if you're only hitting Edinburgh, much like the Johnny Walker experience, this could be a great souvenir of the trip to bring home with you. But I would say that the price is a little high, £95. That said, starting up a distillery is costly. Keeping it running is costly. All these old distilleries that we grew up knowing and have been around for a century or more, they don't have the same startup costs that these new distilleries do. So I understand that they have to make back some of their costs quite quickly in order to keep producing. Um, but you got to be able to walk that tightrope a little bit easier than perhaps this £95 for a 3-year-old is. Michael Torres, did you get a chance to try any indie bottlings while you were there, Matt? Would be great to hear if you came across some hidden gems off the radar pours that catch you by surprise. One of the first ones I tried was that Thompson Brothers Dornock blended malt 5-year-old, and that one was fantastic. Anything from Thompson Brothers, I trust. Anything from Gordon MacPhail, I also am a big fan of and trust. So those are quite something that I'm quite enthusiastic about. I'm going to move that from the stage for a moment here because we're going to move on to another location next. But I figured this would be a great opportunity to possibly open something from the trip. So there's 2 whiskeys that are related to Edinburgh, or I picked up in Edinburgh, that I brought with me back to Canada. One of those is this Cadenhead's Kilkerran 5-year-old heavily peated from, I believe it's a Pedro Jimenez cask, 61.4% ABV, quite a savory and peaty dram. Let's see here. This is heavily peated Kilkerran from Mitchell's Glengyle Distillery, aged 5 years, distilled in 2019, released April 2025, so just before we got there in May. There's 306 bottles, bottled 61.4%. Does it say Oloroso cask matured? That honestly, that makes more sense to me because I do prefer Oloroso to Pedro Jimenez, so I would have been a little more interested in this than the other option. I picked this up, I believe it was about £70. So about £25 less than, say, the Holyrood single cask that we were talking about there. So I did try this in the shop. It was quite an excellent little whiskey, but it is heavily peated, and it could blow my palate out for some of the things that are coming down the line. Speaking of Holyrood, I didn't pick this bottle up on this trip, but I do have my bottle here of Holyrood Arrival. This is their inaugural whiskey release. This is the first one that they bottled in 2023. When I first visited in 2023, they did not actually have whiskey as of yet. And so when this came out, I made sure to grab a bottle because I was interested to see how their whiskey turned out. So, guys, if you have any ideas, pop in the chat there which of these 2 you'd prefer me to open, and I'll go ahead and I'll open that bottle. If you guys don't really have a preference, we'll go ahead and I might just call an audible and pick it myself. While we're waiting to see if you guys have any preferences in the chat for that, I'm going to carry on to the next stop in our trip, which was Campbell Town. And we spent very little time in Campbell Town. And why was that? You can see Springbank here. That's the distillery just outside the distillery shop. There's the parking lot with the famous tower, church tower from the Kilkerran Glengyle bottlings. And there's a picture of a very happy Matt in the Springbank shop picking up bottles. So why am I only showing pictures of the shop and me in the shop and not of the distillery processes and the distillery itself and all these other things? Okay. We arrived in Campbelltown on a Sunday. If you're going to Campbelltown, know that everything whiskey related is closed on a Sunday, which is the case in a lot of parts of Scotland. So Sunday is a no-go. We can't tour Springbank, can't tour Glen Scotia, can't visit the Cadenhead shop. Nothing's open. So we took our time going to Campbell Town. We made a stop at some beaches down on the Kintyre Peninsula. We toured Stirling Castle, which was a great stop. It was actually our first day driving with a rental car. So just getting used to driving on the for what would be for me the other side of the road. Getting used to that again. Uh, we got into Campbelltown quite late, about 7:30 in the evening, and because our window was so narrow, we had to be in Ardnamurchan the next day, and the next day by, like, I think it was 3 PM was the last tour the next day, in order to make it work for us to be able to do what we wanted to do on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula, as well as actually see and tour the distillery. So the choice was whether I had a chance to do a tasting or a tour at Springbank or Glengyle, or whether or not I did a tour and tasting up at Ardnamurchan. Because I've toured both Glengyle and Springbank before, I made the choice to go to Ardnamurchan. What was interesting was, in order to make it to Ardnamurchan on time, because there's a ferry involved in the middle, and there's a lot of winding single track roads, um, which a lot of fun, but when you're in a rush, oh man, stressful. We had to leave Campbelltown by no later than 10:25. And the shop opens up at 10 AM. So, yeah, that was that was oh, man, that was stressful. But it meant that I had no more than 25 minutes to get in the shop, pick up the bottles I wanted to purchase, and then go ahead and make my way to the car, pack the car, and get driving. So, I lined up at 6 AM in the morning, outside of Springbank. I must have looked like a complete loon, just out of my mind. But I'm sure I'm not the first to line up that early to get my hands on cage bottles and some Demi John bottlings. And so for that reason, I don't really have many pictures of Campbelltown. But I'll show you what I picked up from there in just a moment. Let's go back to the chat and see what you guys suggested you'd like to see me open up here. Let's see here. I'm seeing Kirby saying the Cadenhead, Robert Cadenhead. Greg saying I haven't tried the arrival, but others that were nice plus four nice new makes. Yeah, I mean they really do nice new make. Even some really weird ones too. And then missed a few minutes. Sorry, but I'll go for the Cadenhead. Yeah, it seems it's resounding. You guys want to see me open up the Kilkerran heavily peated from Cadenhead, the Oloroso cast. So I'm going to place this arrival off to the side. We'll get this cracked open, pour it in a glass. All right. Yeah, I thought it was a bit of a risk knowing my limitations on the bottles I could bring back to Canada. I thought it was a little bit of a risk to pick up a bottle so early in my journey in Edinburgh. But after trying this, I knew that there was no mistake in picking this up. So very excited to crack this open and to reacquaint myself with this whiskey. All right, let's see if we get a cork pop. Oh, first. Looks like it's got this cap on the top. It's very well situated. There we go. Yeah, little shy cork pop there, but bit of a glug, as Roy would say. Man, if you ever heard Roy simulate the bottle glug sounds on one of his V pubs, it's uncanny. He's so good at that. One more look at that whiskey. And what I remember from this was full on phenolics, full on peat, um, very savory, a bit of sweetness. Well, actually, no, quite sweet, savory, a lot of peat, and a bit of spice is what I think I remember. Oh wow, yeah. And what really drew me to this is all the heavily peated Kilkerran batches that we see for the most part come to us mainly, it seems, from ex bourbon casks, or at least a vatting of ex bourbon and sherry. And to have a purely Oloroso sherry as well as it being a single cask. That was intriguing to me. Okay, and there is that, like, overripe melon sort of note in there that I love from a lot of this. This is gonna be a big bruising beast as, Greg just popped into the chat there. 61.4% ABV. So I'm guessing it went into the cask around 63.5, the typical filling strength. A lot of spice on the nose, but it actually noses with not much prickle, not a lot of heat, not a lot of alcohol vapor. I mean, this is a good what I math is failing me right now. What's the difference between 61.4% and 46%? It's too early in the day. Oh man. It's a good 15% ABV difference between this and the Macalonies I sipped on. That sherry is working overdrive. Bit of like bit of a beef teriyaki note in there. Bit of tobacco. Oh man. To answer your question there, Robert, I do add a couple drops of water. I usually do that when I'm taking notes, not on camera, because it can be very time consuming. Because when I add water, I like to give it some time as well. I don't like to taste it right away, but for something this beastly, I should have some water on hand. I don't have a water dropper at hand at this moment. There's some sort of chalky candies, like Valentine's Day chalky candy hearts, but that peat is very noticeable. It is reminding me of Kilkerran heavily peated. I feel like I could pick this up as Kilkerran heavily peated on the nose, almost blind because of that overripe melon and fruit note, as well as the way the peat is profiling. Great sherried nose though. It's tough to see people not enjoying this, and a bit of that spice. It's like a chili pepper spice in the back too, though. So you can sense that there's going to be some alcohol and some heat to this. All right, I'm going to be brave here and take a dram of this. The fruit comes through on the palate. That was the first thing I noticed. Again, very savory, very on nutty, almost like hazelnut tones for the Oloroso sherry, as well as that sweetness, bit of spice. Again, that actually drinks a lot more friendly than I would imagine, and I find that peat plus sherry, those drams oftentimes don't come off as hot as, say, like a high ABV ex bourbon, but this is actually fairly approachable at cast strength, which is surprising. Mm. Going into some meaty tones here. This is very savory. I'd say it's more savory than sweet. I'd say, yeah, that like almost like beef teriyaki, soy sauce, those almost more meaty tones. Barbecued meats, I think, would be actually what this really is. Like you've grilled up meats on the barbecue, slathered in barbecue sauce. Yeah, barbecue sauce. This is a hefty dram, but on the finish, on the resolve, it's a bit short, possibly because of youth, but it is also a little bit thin. I think water would definitely help with the mouthfeel. I think a little bit of added water will make this better. Um, yeah, I think Robert, you're right. I think this needs a bit of water. A good maybe 5 mils or so would probably help this quite a bit. It would probably open up the nose a bit too, but there's nothing wrong with this dram. Quite enjoyable, but it could be better. Experimentation with water will help this whiskey for sure. But I'm quite liking that. I am glad that I actually managed to bring a bottle of it home. I wasn't certain at first, uh, but I am a big fan of Kilkerran. I love their heavily peated. So yeah, excellent, excellent stuff. From that distillery, and I'm happy to have this bottle back with me here in Canada. Greg, 6 a.m. Oh my goodness, that is brave. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm used to getting up early for fishing or for work. I do like to sleep in, but yeah, when I'm determined, I get up early. The arrival at you had the arrival at the distillery bar, Tim, but have little memory of it. Such a whirlwind trip. Yeah, because you also had your trip to Scotland. You tried it at the bar, but yeah, like me, sometimes it's tough to recall all the details of these whiskeys. Definitely a beast of a youngster, as you could tell there, Greg, but still somehow approachable for 5 years old. And then teriyaki whiskey. I'm in. Yeah, teriyaki whiskey. I found that with Tobermory in the past. I found that with thanks, Skyla. 5 mils of water. Excellent. Um, yeah, I found that with Tobermory in particular. I found some really savory Tobermories that profiled in that soy sauce teriyaki sort of direction. It's a really interesting but divisive style. I found some people who absolutely can't stand it, can't choke a dram down when it's like that. This isn't a traditional whiskey dropper, but we'll give this a shot here. I'll add a little bit of water in. Yeah, roll this around a bit. Let me know your guys' thoughts on Kilkerran heavily peated if you had it. It's usually peated to around 80 ppm, 80 phenols. Um, it is the only distillate that I'm aware of that Springbank makes that is not floor malted at Springbank. I know there's been some debate about this, but what I was told on my tour at Kilkerran was that they actually truck that malt in from elsewhere, which would make it quite unique when it comes to the Mitchell slate of distilleries. Longrow, Hazelburn, Springbank, and typical Kilkerran, they're all floor malted at the Springbank distillery. Springbank closes down for a period of time to allow Kilkerran, Glengyle to operate. So yeah, it is a unique thing for Springbank, and I quite like it. I quite liked my favorite batch of that heavily peated, I believe, was batch 4. Very reasonably priced, about $80 Canadian. And yeah, I mean, I think water's helping already. I can see that it's coating the glass quite a bit more. You'll find that oftentimes with, at least I find it with high ABV drams. Oftentimes the legs will run very quickly because it's in a different stage, just thinner, really. With added water, it actually allows those oils to kind of coat the glass. Like you might be able to see right now. You might see some of the coating there. Nose is almost going on like incense. Yeah, like, ever walked into, like, a incense shop. Nice combination of sweet and savory, a bit of matchstick note, though. So I'm quite enjoying that here. Almost the flintiness, too. I think water's helped the nose. It's not as rigid. I feel like there's more that you can dig into here. On the palate, mm, that has amped up the phenols quite a bit. That has made it actually more a lot more smoky, a lot more on that like bonfire smoke, but really actually it's this earthy peat smoke. It's sawed on a fire, smoldering. In the back, that kind of savory elements turning a little bit more sweet, almost like Turkish delight. A little bit of chocolate in there too. Yeah, water helped immensely. Thanks once again to Robert for that suggestion. Should have had that planned out and had it at hand. Kyla came in with the save, brought me some water. That's really good. Kirby talking about Kilcare and Heavily Peated. I have both batch 11 and batch 10 is my favorite so far. Yeah. Batch 10, I think I have that one home here as well. Yeah, $89 Canadian. Can't go wrong. I like the heavily peated releases, but less than the others because they always come across to me as a bit too unidimensional and too young. Never had a bottle only in show drams. I will say that with batch 4, it started off quite tight and it kind of bloomed into quite a funky tropical fruit sort of peat fruit bomb. Like it was like fruit salad peat bomb. It was really cool. The batch 4, once it had time below the shoulders to kind of just oxidize in bottle. So I will say that they're a whiskey that gets better with time being open. That said, I would agree. Kilkerran 16-year-old, Kilkerran 8 cask strength, the sherry or the ex bourbon, even Kilkerran 12, I do prefer over the heavily peated batches. So I'm with you on that, Greg. Really am. And is yours a single cask, Matt? It changes things. Plus the sherry versus the usually bourbony heavily peated. Yeah. So this is a single cask, 306 bottles, bottled in April of 2025, distilled 2019, and Oloroso sherry cask, full maturation. Which is why it stood out to me because yeah, typically it's more those ex bourbony notes that you get from the heavily peated batches. Robert, you're opening up an Ardnamurchan Madeira cask finish. So that would be the second Madeira release, I do believe, there, Robert. I absolutely loved their first Madeira release. Quite the fantastic whiskey. I'm a Scotsman. I know my whiskey. I'd say you do there, Robert. I'd say you do. And Greg's a bit jealous there in France where he lives. The distributor refuses to import the Madeira rums and so turns. Why would they do that? Wow, that feels like a mistake. I don't know what the importer is thinking there. Huh. So they bring in the 80 core range and they bring in the cask strength. Maybe the sherry, but they won't do the Madeira, the rum, the sauternes. The Madeira is fantastic. Interesting. All right. Back to, well, very near the place where this whiskey comes from, the Glengyle Distillery. So what did I pick up at this Campbell Town whiskey shop? I'll show you guys the bottles I brought back, and we'll pick one of these ones to open up as well in good time here. I'm going to set this Macalonis aside. Might use that a little later just to gauge my palate since I've had that a few times. I'll move this over and we'll consider what bottle we're going to open next. We're just popping bottles, popping corks today, guys. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see if I can get the angles right on this. It's going to be a little cluttered, but it'll only be for a short time. Okay. So what did I pick up in Campbell Town? If you saw the video, you saw I picked up a couple cage bottles. I also picked up something that I didn't pick up last time that I think is kind of an underestimated, underappreciated part of the Springbank experience, and that is demi-John bottlings. Things like this beauty right here, 58.6% cask strength demi-John bottling of Springbank. And I didn't just pick up this, what looks like sherry and possibly wine influenced Springbank here, but I picked up one of the Hazelburn, which looks very much more ex-bourbon, 55.7% ABV. I always find Hazelburn seems to be a lot lower ABV than the other offerings, but maybe that's that might actually just be an indicator of age. Who knows? Or this rather dark, rather stunning looking long row, 57.5% ABV. Or lastly, going back to where we just were, looks like a sherry influenced Glengyle Kilkerran single malts. This one's 59.6% ABV. So people line up in line to get their hands on those cage bottlings. And I've opened up a cage bottling last time I did a live stream about Campbell Town following my first trip to Scotland. This time I wanted to talk about these demijohn bottlings because they are a very good price at the distillery at 65 pounds. Used to be 55 pounds. They've gone up 10 pounds. But such is life. But these you can hand fill yourself. I did not hand fill these myself. I did not have the time. As I mentioned, we had to get on the road to Ardnamurchan. I took one of each because I don't know what the process is of how they select what casks are going to be added to the demijohns. If it's just like kind of like cask ends, like if it's like, okay, we have this leftover from this bottling run poured in the demijohn, or if they're specifically picking out casks that they want to add to the demijohns. I don't know what ages they look for, but it obviously must be kind of a mixture. They're kind of living demijohns, so they got a bit of everything from back in the day. I think that's a fantastic idea. It's similar to what the Cadenhead shop did in Edinburgh when I picked up that sherried blend, sherried malt from their shop. I think it's a great idea, and it's something that you don't have any limits on. You can pick up as many bottles as you want. They're always available. There's always demijohn bottlings at the distillery. You don't have to worry about them being sold out. You don't have to be worried that they're not going to have Springbank 10 or 15 on the shelf. It's such a great idea for the distillery to make sure that they have something for distillery visitors to walk away with that is unique, that they could only have gotten at the distillery. This is a great solve for that. And I don't really think these would get the kind of secondary pricing that other things do, which kind of eliminates that purchasing for profit and profiteering element of things. So Springbank, Hazelburn, Longrow, Kilkerran, Demijohn hand fills. We'll see what you guys want me to open up here. And if it's a tie, I might just break the tie. All right, let's see. Back to our Ardnamurchan chat here with Greg when we were talking about not the importer not bringing in the Madeira rum so turns. They don't trust the distillery because it's a young distillery, they say, and they also withdrew the McLean's Nose too. Wow. Yeah, McLean's Nose is a great whiskey. I think the McLean's Nose, the only problem with that, lovely whiskey. I really enjoyed it. It's so close in price to the 80 core range whiskey in my market that if I was to replace it with a bottle, I would probably replace it just with the 80 core range again and again and again. So I might understand the McLean's Nose, but again, it's more accessible price to others. So yeah, it does seem like a weird decision, Greg. I don't know why they don't have trust in what is probably the best new distillery in Scotland. Yeah, those guys have no idea how great this distillery is, to be honest. There it is. And what an embarrassment of riches. Yeah, no, I went a bit overboard at Springbank, but I knew what I wanted. I knew my mistake. One of my regrets from last time was not coming back with one of these demijohn bottlings. So Kirby's got to vote in for the Hazelburn. Michael down in Brazil is opening up an Old Balatruin. Ah, yes. Digging into some peat as well. Greg's voting for the Springbank peated Tallmantal, as Greg called it here. Sugar Kitty. Meow. Welcome here, Sugar Kitty. Oh, man. Robert's voting for Springbank. Tim is Springbank along. It sounds like we're opening up the Springbank, guys. Yeah, I'm game. Let's do that. We are going to set aside the Kilkerran, the Longrow, and the Hazelburn. Sorry, Kirby. We'll crack open this Springbank handfill. Now, one of the things that I did carry with me all throughout my trip, the rest of the trip, I had a 200 ml bottle of this Springbank handfill that I picked up, much the same way I used the Cadenhead's bottling as kind of road whiskey. I used the Springbank hand filled 200 ml bottle, which I think was 20 pounds. I use that as kind of my going to the beach, going hiking um, dram, and it was lovely stuff. I really enjoyed it. That's it. Somewhere's between Arden American and Isla Harris, I lost my sense of taste and smell because I got sick. So it'll be nice to reacquaint myself with this again and to be able to fully appreciate it. All right, let's crack this bottle. That was a better cork pop, I think. All right. Whew. This bottle wanted to be opened. Give you one more look at that before I place it down. Yeah, really nice color on that. I say 58.6%. Yeah, 58.6%. Oh wow. Okay. Immediately more on first impression I got was almost like a little bit like vinegar, like balsamic vinegar. After the Kilcairn heavily peated, it's a little harder to pick up those peat notes. Bit of like bit on the like almost like wine notes. Red wine. Bit of dusty chocolate, like probably that like baker's chocolate again. Just kind of dark and chalky. But I don't know, there's something different to this. Might be a little tight right now. Just gonna take a drink of water after that heavily peated whiskey. I remember this whiskey being much more expressive on the nose. Maybe that's because last time I had it, it was the end of that Springbank 200 ml bottle. Um, oh, that's better now. Bit of leather. Perhaps orange. Pear. Bit of that peat now too. Checking in the comments. Smirja, I must say I was laughing at your reaction to the Tyrion Peely 100% sherry. It was pretty much my reaction at the event when I was there. Yeah, Smeargel shared a picture of a Finnish whiskey from 100% sherry cask, and it was so light it seemed like the refill of the refill ex bourbon cask. It felt like fourth fill ex bourbon, like Glenfarclas or something. It was weird looking. It was very very strange looking, and they were certain that it was 100% sherry. I had, yeah, I can understand why you're laughing because I was floored that was the color. Michael's saying he loves that sound, either the cork pop or the glug. Yeah, nice glug indeed. Regarding the color and your first notes, could it be a mix of Oloroso Port, PX, and Pinot Noir? It very well could be. I've seen some ridiculous different cast types on the grounds of Springbank. I've seen Reef Salt. I've seen, gosh, I think I saw Montbazillac. I've seen, oh, Rioja. There's a lot of different cast types that they're playing with. This is going more actually, port might be a good call. I'm getting chocolates and getting red fruits, Pinot Noir too, with that like kind of balsamic vinegar, almost like acidic sort of note, vinous note on the nose. Springbank is so heavy a spirit with the configuration of the stills that it's tough to taste through it, but there's definitely the peat there. Oh yeah, no, I don't know if I've ever had a Springbank that came off unpeated, and it's coming through more and more now. You're right, Sugar Kitty. Like it, it's fat and oily enough, and there's just so much there that you're gonna pick up the peat, I think. All right, taking a sip. Okay, that is a flavor explosion. It was shy on the nose, explosive on the palate. Um, right now on the back end, wine gums, seashell minerality, peat, orange. Oh, I know I used the Turkish delight note at the end of the Kilkerran, but I'm getting that too. Maybe I just got that. I mean, wine gums is kind of similar to that Turkish delight filling, chocolate. So like chocolate covered wine gums. Um, there's Springbank funk in there. Wasn't picking it up on the nose, coming across on the palate. Hot damn. Mm. There's a bitterness to the orange, is more like a blood orange, going towards grapefruit. That lovely, lovely peating level, that moderate peat. It's just like it's adding to instead of covering over. It's like in the background, there's that like that hearth, that fire hearth that's adding smoke to it, but not overwhelmingly so. Mm. Oh man, that's stunning stuff. And I was trying to highlight before I took that sip. There's no such thing as going overboard at the Springbank shop. I regret not getting more there. Yeah, that's how I wound up walking out with 6 bottles there, Tim. It was it was my regret too of not picking up more at that shop. I'm gonna stick with my thoughts that there could be port and red wine casks involved, Pinot Noir, Malbec, these sorts of things they've used in the past. Oh man, that's so good on the palate that I don't even want to add water to it. I will for science, but that was roughly the same price. These two here, the Caden Heads and Kilcairn heavily peated, and the Springbank. And I'm gonna take a sip of this just to confirm, but I'm leaning heavily towards this being my preferred whiskey on the table right now. Mm. Springbank is coming off older, more complex, more cohesive too. Good, better. That's the way I'm reading this. Yeah, that is. Don't pass up on the demijohns just because you see things like the cage bottles there. Get your cage bottles. Don't forget to try these because you can try them before you buy them. I did not try them because I didn't have time and I was going to be driving. And I had to drive a very long distance to get to Ardnamurchan on time. So happy I brought a bottle of this back. Highly recommend you try each of the demijohns and either pick your favorite or pick a number of favorites if you're at the Springbank Distillery shop. It's well worth it. Well worth it. Okay. Comments here. I found that the darker Springbank demijohns to be overly sulfured. I'm sensitive to this and have therefore gone for the lighter ex bourbon ones. Yeah, good take. I think a lot of people who have the same trouble as you, Mike, will go for the ex bourbon casks in the cage as well. Seeing an ex bourbon long row or Springbank is gold, because yeah, Springbank can go towards that sulfur note quite easily. I know I've found that most commonly on the Springbank 15s, a bit of a sulfur note, not a bit. Sometimes it's overwhelming. I'm lucky in that I'm not sensitive to it, but at the same time, if I'm talking to you guys about it, it also means that I might miss that sulfur being there if it's more subtle, because I just don't pick up on it in the same amount. And I like a matchstick sulfur. I like that type of sulfur, or like a spirit sulfur. I don't like the rotten egg type of sulfur I've had off of a certain Octomore in the past, from red wine casks. To throw Octomore under the bus a little here, I've given them a lot of love. The long rows, on the other hand, I have loved the dark ones. Okay, so maybe the peat helps cover up some of the potential sulfuric notes. Sugar Kitty, Mitchell might have access to quite a range of used casks for some strange reason. And Reeve salts is very tricky. I've added some in my recent French distillery BYO, and I have to say I regretted it. It turned out to dominate a bit too much. The rest, port, PX, and cognac, and new oak. Okay, yeah, I could see Reeve salts taking over. I have a Bruichladdich, aged completely, fully matured in Reeve salts, a Reeve salt, and yeah, it's dominating. You can't pull spirit character from that. I think it was only 7 or 9 years old, something in that range, and it just took over the dram. Really interesting cast type, but I think it needs to be used very much in moderation. Cool to hear you talk about casks. Some distilleries have been exploring Brazilian woods like Amburana. Would be awesome to see what Scotch could do with that. Yeah, I know that Race, not specifically Brazilian, but they had, I think Quercus Humboldti, which was a type of Colombian oak. I know people have worked with Andean oak casks, Brazilian oak casks as well, but Amburana, I have had exactly one whiskey for Amburana, and it was like cinnamon roll spice bomb. It was pepper, it was chili peppers, it was black pepper, it was paprika, it was cinnamon, it was nutmeg, it was spice, 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 wood, 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 wood. Um, yeah, it was a unique whiskey. It was not, and I like the people who made it, and what they're trying to do with whiskey and trying to throw different spins on whiskeys with that. I've seen Amberana come up with bourbon quite a bit, and I know of one Canadian single malt that has used it. I'm not hunting down Amberana because I find that it just takes over the show. And actually, yeah, moving on to Sugar Kitty's comment here. Amberana quickly overwhelms. They have to be careful. The spices would certainly be strange in a scotch. Might be more interesting for Scottish grain like Girvan. I'd agree. I think that it's had more positive reception with something like bourbon, which would be more on corn than on single malt, like a Canadian single malt. The one I had was the Spirit for Us. I think it was Last Straw single malt from Amberana. And while it was an interesting whiskey, it was not my favorite. Their Spoonies Canadian blend was fantastic. I highly recommend that. Amberana cask single malt was just a spice bomb. It did overwhelm. You're bang on there, Sugar Kitty. Let's see here. Yeah, shout out to the Union Distillery. I'm not familiar with the Lammas Distillery, but Union, I've heard lots of good things. I know they've been bottled by Cadenheads in Campbell Town before. So yeah, nice to see Brazilian whiskey trying to punch through. Sugar Kitty, any trip to Campbelltown should be a buy, buy, buy for bottles there. They're all so horrifically marked up here in the US. Yeah, you guys are getting like it's a little bit better here in Canada for Springbank prices. I have to say, Gold Medal Marketing into Alberta, they do a good job of keeping the prices reasonable and not gouging. There's a couple stores that gouge, but they do a good job of keeping people accountable. I don't know what it is about the US, but they're taking the piss. They are absolutely ripping you guys off for the prices they charge. Not saying it's not worth it, but they don't need to be doing that to you guys. Rasse, it was Colombian oak. Yeah, Quercus Humboldti, I think it was, and interesting indeed. I would love to try that whiskey, Greg. Kilcairn 16 at Springbank Shop is literally half the US California price. There it is. Yeah, it's not fair, guys. Not fair. Let's see here. And that's only because California gets some of the best prices, literally three times in most places in the US. Yeah, like again, I've perused that KNL shop quite a bit, and they seem prices are very good on most things. But Springbank, I don't know if I've ever seen it there, but I've seen it listed at other shops. I've seen people post pictures online. The prices are atrocious. Mm. Good fact check there. Humboldt oak is Andean, Peru, not Colombian. Okay. All right. Thank you for correcting me on that. It is I'm getting lost in the weeds with all these oak casts. I gotta brush up again. Um I got a nice example of Gariana oak with a Canadian rye whiskey that I'd love to open on the channel sometime from Stillhead on Vancouver Island. The only native oak type that grows here in southern British Columbia is Gariana oak, and it's quite highly protected. But there's a story on that, and maybe if you guys are interested, I'll cover Stillhead and the first Canadian rye to ever be aged in Gariana oak, which again can be quite heavy-handed. And Robert, you're a member of the Cadenhead Club. Get down and do your six cask. So yeah, you guys get cask free cask tastings as part of that. As part of that, really cool idea. Really loving that. Peter White, welcome to the chat here, Peter. Good to have you on board, buddy. Always great when you check in. This Springbank handfill, great stuff. Really loving it. Noses again going more actually. It's opening up a bit more. A bit of cola cubes now on the nose as well. But that palette was just explosive. I think you could see it on my face. Instant reaction. It was exactly what I was hoping and what I remembered this to be from when I polished off a 200 ml bottle of it in my travels in Scotland. Excellent stuff. Awesome. Awesome stuff. All right, we're going to move this one over to the side now as well. We're going to carry on with our journeys up to the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. So as you heard, that's where we're going next. So I had to make the trip all the way up to Ardnamurchan. It's quite a long journey. The roads weren't actually as bad as I had heard people speak on them, but quite a lot, a narrow single track road. I believe it was 4.5 hours to drive from Campbell Town to Ardnamurchan on that day. There I am in the Ardnamurchan warehouse, warehouse number 1. This is the one that has the bottom dunnage floor, and well, I believe it has a second floor above it. So it's kind of like 1.5 warehouses, or it's like traditional dunnage as well as kind of modern warehouse. On the right hand side there, though, you can see Ardnamurchan Distillery cask number 1, 2014. It's really cool that they have that on display. That seems very fitting in my mind to have that in a place of prominence. When you walk in on a tour, that is one of the first casks you see, and for good reason. Couple things to note here, just some interesting things that I saw. One is this cast that was presented to the Ardnamurchan Distillery, 25th of July, 2014, from the directors of the Glenfarclas Distillery. And what they say at the bottom there is it's a proper cask for your new whiskey. So they wanted to give him a good quality cask to mark the distillery opening. That's a good bit of nice working hand in hand together. I mean, it's a good, I guess, notion to be able to give hand over a cask, say, here, fill this with whiskey. We'll give you a good start, a proper whiskey cask. So I thought that was pretty cool to see the industry kind of working together as friends in that way. Now, to the right here, they were rolling these casks out in the yard. And I looked closer and I saw that it had Duro River Valley on the cask. It looked like, I believe these are port casks. It could be like a red wine cask from the, from Portugal as well. They could even be like, I didn't see Ribera del Douro on it, so I don't think it's that wine style. But my guess is those might be port casks coming in. And I don't think they've ever used port casks for Ardnamurchan as of yet. We've had Madeira, we've had Sauternes, rum, mezcal, obviously sherry. I don't think we've seen port. So in the future, we may be seeing a port cask Ardnamurchan. That's my guess. That's just a hunch. Yeah, so that'd be pretty cool to see if it ever comes out. Because if so, I will remember seeing these casks rolled along the yard. Some sights from inside the distillery there. You might have seen some of these before on Roy's live VPub from Ardnamurchan. We've got these combination of stainless steel and wooden washbacks. They have a combination of both. They used to originally have limousine oak washbacks, but those warped quite quickly. So now they've moved on to Oregon pine, I believe. There is one, I think, that is still limousine oak. Also, you have the mash tun here. At this time, they were running peated mash. So it had all those lovely phenolics. It had that like very porridgey kind of smell you get from the mash tun doing its thing. And then to the left here, on the left-hand side, that you'll see a curious sign that says malt floor. That was up the stairs and up a railing above us. Now, Ardnamurchan doesn't floor malt their own whiskeys. However, they do have a malt floor, as well as a pagoda style roof that allows for a kiln to be used to go ahead and to floor malt at the distillery. And I do believe that is in the plans. They've spoken about that subtly in plans with One Nation Under Whiskey, Joshua, and oh gosh, I'm blanking on the other name there, but Joshua Hatton and Mr. Yellen. Can't remember his first name, but they talked with them and said they're hoping in the future to be able to floor malt their own whiskey, and that would be pretty friggin' cool. They already have the setup. They just need to move on to that next step. Here we have the wash still, the spirit still, and the spirit safe here at Ardnamurchan. And some lovely people here at Ardnamurchan. I ran into a number of people. Ran into Alex Bruce. Was great chatting with him. Jenny Carlson, while we're in the middle of the tour, ran into her. It was great to see her in person, to say hi, and to say how much I appreciated her input on VPubs and her posts on Instagram. Great to see Jenny. I know, Greg, you've run into Jenny at Whiskey Live Paris, I believe, in the past. In the middle there, Connell McKenzie. Connell's a fun guy to be around. And he was there on that day, taking people through the warehouse to pick out a single cask. And we were on our tour. And as our tour guide's talking, Connell just yells out, "Hey, I know that guy." And he marches across the warehouse, comes over, and we have a big hug, and he's like, "How's it going?" It was way too funny. He just spied me from across the warehouse. It was pretty cool, I have to say. But yeah, I had to take a picture with both Jenny and Connell there, and that's the outside of the Ardnamurchan distillery. I can't say enough good things about the people who make the whiskey at Ardnamurchan and just how much I appreciate the Ardnamurchan distillate itself. It's beautiful whiskey. The Paul Lanois, that's really grown on me from my first crack. The sherry cask is phenomenal. Their core range even is excellent as well. They're making proper whiskey in proper whiskey casks, and maybe Glenfarclas was a bit of a forebear with that, with giving them that proper whiskey cask. But yeah, making fantastic stuff. I did pick up a handfill bottle of using Golden Promise barley from an Oloroso sherry. I believe it was Octave. Really cool to bring that bottle home. Wasn't too expensive. I believe it was about 50 pounds there, 60 pounds. You guys might be able to see the Let me actually make this bigger. I should be able to see 50 pounds for a 500 ml hand fill, 6-year-old Golden Promise from Oloroso. Um, yeah, excited to get my hands on Golden Promise because there's been a lot of people talking about how much they appreciate that particular type of Ardent American whiskey, and I've never had a Golden Promise yet from them, so that'll be pretty cool. And these are some of the whiskeys that I tried while staying on Ardent American. Connell sent me away with some samples of Ardent American to take back to our cabin that we were staying at. And those were the Mezcal cask release, the Sherry cask release, the first Midgie release, not the second, and the Sauternes cask, because I was there before the second one came out. So I got to try a bit of these basically sitting in a volcanic caldera of an ancient volcano, just looking out at the pasture, looking at the lambs and sheep running by and the cows. And it was a pretty spectacular place to be able to enjoy whiskey. And Ardent American itself is just such a gorgeous, gorgeous place. I can't say enough good about it. Um, I will say though, as I mentioned, between Ardent American and Isla Harris, I lost my sense of taste and smell, which means my tasting notes, my recollection of these are not great. I really loved the Midgie. I loved the balance in there. I think they had some Sauternes casks inside that vatting, that blend, but it was just it was that it reminded me a lot of the 80 core release, just an amped up version of the core. And I think the core is actually quite lovely. I almost prefer it more than the cast strength. I know people hold almost exclusively the opposite opinion on that. But the first Midgie was really good. I The first Midgie was, I believe, exclusive to the UK. However, the second one, I believe, is getting exported as well. So I know, for instance, that we are expecting to see that one in Canada later this year. I'd love to pick up a bottle of that because if it's as good as that first Ardent American Midgie, it's well worth picking up. Some pictures from on Ardent American here. Hmm. We went to on a cruise on a ship that took us out to the Treshnish Isles. There was a large puffin colony, so got up and close and personal with puffins. Visited the Isle of Staff. That's a picture of Fingal's Cave there, as well as our cabins, which are the bottom picture there and at sunset. Very near, like maybe 3-minute, 4-minute drive away from Santa Bay, Santa Beach, which is what these other two photos are from. One is of the water there in the mountains, and another one is just one of the rocky spits that juts out into the ocean. Really quite a lovely, rugged, beautiful part of the world. I am, yeah, I just feel lucky to have been able to go there. Kyla loved it as well. Yeah, I think Ardent American's just truly a special place. And um, personally, for us, we are very happy that we did not have to deal with any midgies. Not a single midgie in Ardent American. I only ran into midgies once on our entire trip, and it was at a ferry terminal waiting to take a ferry to the Isle of Skye. We did not have any trouble with midgies. A couple weeks later, they were covered in midgies shooting a video for the new midgie release at the Ardent American distillery. So we felt very lucky to get away midgie free. Let's see here. Not sure what the next slide is. Okay, yeah. I'm going to put these pictures back up for a moment here and go through some comments. And we're going to pick out an Ardent American bottling to open and to quickly taste here. Let's see here. Lots of comments. First off, we'll start right here. Curious what you guys think about the rise of American single malt after the 2022 guidelines. Think Canada might develop its own version. Not sure how much single malt is being made there yet. There's a ton of single malt being made in Canada, Michael. There are, oh gosh, probably 24 single malt distilleries. Shelter Point, Macaloni's, 2 brewers. The first single malt distillery in North America is in Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, with Glenora making their Glen Breton whiskey. There are gosh, in BC alone, I think there's at least 12 to 15 distilleries making single malts. So I'm hoping that we get more defined and more robust kind of rules, regulations, and guidelines around whiskey in Canada. The problem is it will take the government actually doing it because they've defined it as something that basically resembles the aroma and flavor of Canadian whiskey or Canadian rye whiskey can be labeled rye without there being even 0%, 1% rye grain in the whiskey itself. Um, I think we need classifications, much like you guys have done in the United States. Classify it, actually give us definitions, and do something that will actually hold the whiskey in high regard. Because right now, I don't think Canadian whiskey is being served very well by our regulations because people don't trust the quality because of things just like that. So yeah, I love what you guys have done with the American single malt guidelines, and I'd love to see something like that come to Canada. And there is talk about that possibly being the case in the future. Yeah, you spotted that ex Glenfarclas cask in the warehouse there, Greg. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I had to take a picture of that. Westland Garyana is very hefty price. Yeah, I've tried the Garyana release. It's good stuff. At least the batch I had. There's many different batches, but very expensive. I haven't picked up a bottle because of that. Let's see here. Tough to pronounce. Limousine. You don't spell the e after limousine. Is it limousine? Otherwise, it means limousine. Luxury car. Yeah, so maybe limousine. Eh, pronunciation, my arch nemesis. Today's episode is brought to you by the letter D. D is for Doig. Okay. Greg, hope to make it there someday. Yep, Jenny is great. Had the chance to meet her first when she was working for Springbank in the 2000s. Oh, okay, so you go way back with Jenny there. Greg, yeah, she definitely started off with Springbank. And what a cool thing to go from Springbank to Ardent American. I mean, one great distillery to another. Let's see here. Representing the brand in Paris, but not Whiskey Live Paris as AD, is not distributed by La Maison de Whiskey, La Maison de Whiskey, sorry, here for the record, but by Dugas. And yeah, nice selection with the Golden Promise. Only know the two in the middle. With the samples we tried there. Yeah. Cool. Puffin's bill is too heavy for it to fly, right? I mean, there was plenty flying out there. They're quite adept flyers. They also scurry across the ground in a pretty cute way. Donner Pass, I hear the Midge will be coming to KNL at some point. Also, Thompson Brothers Mystery Batch 2 will be coming. Yeah, I heard that there was a batch 2 that was for export. Ah, man, if you watched my review of my Thompson Brothers Mystery Malt, you will know I'm a huge fan and felt very lucky with what I got in my bottle. But I'll leave that a mystery for those of you who haven't watched it, so you can go on later. And at some point, I said it right. Thanks, Greg. All right. Let's take a look at what we have on the deck here for Ardent American bottlings. I've got a few that are unopened, so you guys can choose what one I open here. Sometimes I wonder, either people want to hear about the whiskey I actually picked up in Scotland, even though they might not actually be able to get that themselves, or they want to hear something about an official bottling that they can. So I'm throwing these options in here in case you guys want to go either direction. So I've got my Ardent American Golden Promise. I should take that down. Ardent American Golden Promise 6-year-old Oloroso sherry hand fill from the distillery itself. That was very cool pickup in my opinion. I have Ardent American 10-year-old. Partially, I think ex-bourbon and Paul Lamois casks. This is their first 10-year-old. It's a special release. It's not a 10-year-old that's going to be repeated over and over. I believe it was a one-time thing for the 10th anniversary. Unpeated Ardent American. The Ardent American Sauternes release. I believe the 8010 and the Sauternes are both 50% ABV. And then what Robert was dramming there is the Ardent American Madeira release. This is their second Madeira release, bottled at 52% ABV. So if you guys want to pop in the chat, which one of those you'd like me to open up, I will gladly oblige. Donner Pass, American single malt is intriguing, but most of it is aged in virgin oak that I really don't like. Westland was very interesting with the kitchen sink mash bill, like a beer would have. Yeah, they did a lot of different work with mash bills. They've also used X beer casks quite a bit. Red wine casks from Oregon and California, Washington State. Yeah, they actually have experimented quite a bit. I mean, I'm not surprised with their owners being the same owners of Brooklady Distillery. So I think there might be sort of an overlap in the ethos, especially when it comes to like local grains, local peat, those sorts of things. Sugar Kitty clarifying here. I don't mean to. It can't fly. I mean it can't fly normal. That is actually an important distinction. The dang things fly up, they fly down, they fly up, they fly down. It's a wave pattern instead of straight. Oh, interesting. Um, Thinking about it now, yeah, that does make sense because it was a very almost like a swooping pattern. They'd always, like, take off the rocks and then immediately go down. Interesting. Michael Torres, Matt, would love to see a video where you explore some of the top quality Canadian whiskeys out there. I feel like the category doesn't get enough credit. Who better to explore this than you? Thank you, Michael. Yeah, we got Canada Day coming up July 1st here, so hopefully I'll have a Canada centric whiskey video out in time for that. Greg, curious of the Sauternes and my own bottle. I bottled the Golden Promise and, of course, the Madeira first. Okay. Sugar Kitty, which one? Yes. All right. And +1 to Donner Pass. Well, oh man. Okay. That's tough. I heard Greg, I heard he mentioned both the Sauternes and the Madeira and the hand fill. Sugar Kitty's kind of leaving it up in the air, saying which one, yes. Hmm. I think I've been really curious about the 80 10-year-old. I've been very curious about the 80 10-year-old. And seeing as that was bottled to celebrate the distillery, I think I might open up that one. That's one something that can be accessible to you guys, is also something that I've never tried. So let's do that. I feel like Canada was the last market on the planet to get the 80 10-year-old. I feel like it came here so much later than anywheres else. Um, that said, that's the case with a lot of whiskeys, and that can be a double-edged sword because for us in Canada, it means that we're the last ones to get it, but it also means that we usually have a quite a bit, quite a few reviews of whiskeys before we actually have a chance to buy them, which means if they're really bad, we can avoid them. So yeah, we'll see what this one has. Greg's already piping in here with something I've heard from others. Bit disappointed with the 10-year-old, to be honest, Matt. But won't say more if you haven't seen my video. I'll leave it to you to discover it. Yeah, I remember um, Pete had mentioned that he did not get along with the 10-year-old. And I wondered if that had been the Paul Lanois cask influence. But if you're saying you didn't get along with the 10-year-old as well, I think that's I mean, you love the Paul Lanois. I think that's something else completely. So let's see. Let's see what we got on a first crack on this 80-10. All right. 50% ABV, non-chill filtered natural color. It was about a little over $100 here in Canada. Big grainy, touch of pears, green apple. Hmm. Getting stuck on the pear and green apple notes here. Something confectionery in there too. Quite shy though. I just cracked this and just poured it. Might need some time to open up. Maybe a touch of like Aussie licorice, but no, no, I'm still just stuck on pears and apples. Honey. Almost wish I would have grabbed my Paul Lamoille 2024 to do a comparison. I think the malt comes through again. That grain note is there. Maybe there's a touch of like farminess too. Almost feels a little green. Almost feels a little green. Almost the feeling of like grape candy as well. Um, I had like purple candy pop into my mind there. But yeah, like a grape candy, which is odd. I don't know if I ever actually had that tasty note before, and I would expect it was something that's more on like sherry tones than on this. Hmm. Oh, interesting. Starts out very clear, um, malt malt sugar notes, but it's like a bright malt sugar. It's clean, and then it makes this like sharp right angle turn to more dessert tones, to caramel toffees, butterscotches. Interesting. Mm. Maybe a touch of lemon, like let me say citrus instead of lemon to be particular. There's definitely um farminess to as well. More on, and by farminess, I feel like it's just like it's very stuck on this like grainy funk. Bit of fizziness too. Hmm. There's a nice spice. The spice quite takes over the finish. To be quite honest, it's not like overbearing, but it leaves me with this impression of fizziness, effervescence, if you will. Not in the same bright sort of way that I have with Paul Lamois, um, but yeah, I think that sharp turn, you might have popped it in the comments, and maybe this is why I'm thinking it. That sharp kind of 90-degree turn it makes from that more bright, clear malt note to more caramel, toffee, butterscotches along those lines might be that oak you're talking about, and then it leads into that spice. So, Greg, you have this comment here, and caught in the corner of my eye. My concern is about the oak and spice being too loud. I mean, those dessert tones very much on like American oak sort of tones, vanilla, butterscotch, toffee, caramel. Um, and then going to that spice. Yeah, I could see it, the oak having been a bit heavy-handed. I will say too, this is very like these are some of the first casks that were distilled by ardent Americans, so they're still fine-tuning their craft at this point, is the way I'd put it. They released this in 2024, so it was in their for their 10th anniversary, which means they don't have the luxury of pulling from different casks from different years as well, because it all has to be 10 years old, and when the only stuff you have that's 10 years old is from 2014, well, then you're stuck with that. Um, hmm, it's not a bad whiskey, by any means. I think you're onto something there with the oak impact. I do have to throw a caution out there. I know Top Shelf on YouTube, they suggested that the Ardnamurchan 10 was one of the worst whiskeys they ever tried. I think that is hyperbole. It almost feels slanderous. But that was their own experience. So who am I to say that their experience wasn't what they experienced? Um, I did not immediately fall in love with the Paul Lemois. It took time drinking it down past the shoulder. My bottle's probably down around here now on my Paul Lemois. I've quite enjoyed it, and I would love to re-review that after bottle cracking it on a live, much like this. I want to give this time and space to oxidize a bit in the bottle, and for me to get to know it a bit better, to take my time pulling tasting notes out. But I can see your concerns with it, Greg. I don't think it's as pretty or as complex as the Paul Lanois. Um, and I do have to say I'm a sucker for peated influence in my Ardnamurchan. I don't like full peat. I like somewhat, let's say either half or one third, two thirds. So one third peated, two thirds unpeated, like that sort of thing. I think would be perfect for Ardnamurchan's house style. Um, but I also know that their first year, I do believe they only filled unpeated. So it would have been tough to do anything peated in a 10-year-old. I'm very much looking forward to their follow-up to this, whether it's a 12-year-old, whether it's a core range 10-year-old. And hopefully I have some of this still remaining to go ahead and compare to. But Ardnamurchan's making fantastic whiskey. Hmm. Very cool. I've waited a long time to open up that bottle. Yeah, I want to see how that develops. All right. Checking out the comments here. There was one here that caught my eye, and yeah. Um, all right. Uh, Sugar Kitty on the puffins still. May I put the puffins back on the screen for this part? Puffins bill weighs them down, so they keep flying to overcome the imbalance. So they're fighters, is what you're saying. Puffins are fighters of the bird world. They don't give up. Um, some more comments here. Greg, your temporary rating was 87 out of 100 because you feel the 80-10 might still move. But to be honest, the rating for the Paul Lanois 2024 was way higher at 91 and a half. 87 is still a good rating at 91 and a half. Yeah, you are in love with that Paul Lanois. Actually, I think I did read your review of the Paul Lanois on your new website, the English summary and tasting notes at the bottom. Really engaging stuff, Greg. It was a really good review. Um, your expectations of the 10-year-old might have been too high. Yeah, that's possible. And you sense that the Herak 10-year-old will be better probably. You know, I would join you as well as Tim in suggesting that the Herak 10-year-old will be a stunning whiskey. I have loved the whiskey from Isla Harris, and I've become very familiar with it over the last little bit here. And I'm itching to get on to that part of the trip because we did go to the Isla Harris. So maybe we'll blast through these comments and get right over to Harris. And Tim, I prefer that elegant thread of peat and things like the sherry cask release. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that, Tim. I really enjoyed that sherry cask release, possibly because of that. On the top shelf, Dustin and Mike, reservations, it was way exaggerated for me. It did seem to be a bit of hyperbole. Um, I'll join you on that, Greg. And agreed, batch 2 will probably be better, more cast choice, absolutely. And yeah, awesome. All right, moving on. So to get to the Isle of Harris, we had to cut through Skye. We unfortunately only had a day on Skye and not even a full day because we even had our time on Skye cut short because of a car accident on the only road that led to the other part of the island. So we had very limited time on Skye. I'd love to go back to Skye and do it properly because It really is a beautiful place. But we also found that we were put off a bit by just how many people were on Skye. It was loaded with tourists, and it was a bit claustrophobic after going to somewhere as remote as Ardnamurchan. But here, there's a picture of the Quarang, a lovely hike. There's a picture of Port Ruy in one of the main towns on Skye. And early in the morning, before it even opened, unfortunately, we passed the new Torreveg distillery. Love what I've tried from Torreveg so far. Was a bit sad to have to miss out on that, but we had to make tracks to get to the other side of the island to catch a ferry to Harris. And here's some pictures from the Isle of Harris. Um, Stunning beaches, stunning weather for us. Highland Cues and just this beautiful aquamarine um, blue water. It was just stunning scenery, as a place that will is kind of a big representation of what our honeymoon trip to Scotland was. Um, yeah, can't say enough good about the people and the place itself. The people are fantastic, but the actual Isles of Harris and Lewis are just a special place that I'd suggest everyone visit at some point. One of the attractions that you can go see, one of the pieces of history is the Callanish standing stones. And there's a number of different sites with the stones, but this is from site one, the main site. Um, it's um, believed to be erected back in like 3000 BC. So we're talking about something that's been standing on this site for in and around 5,000 years. Just really, really cool thing to see. And it feels different in the presence of it. Like there's just a quiet around it and there's an energy around it. They are aligned um, with the sun, with the actual solstice. And so you look at the stones, they are aligned northeast southwest. It's pretty cool. Honestly, it's a very stunning site. And if you go to Harris and Lewis, you got to stop by the Callanish standing stones. And of course, we had to visit the Isle of Harris distillery. um Now, when you visit the distillery center, it is a stunning visitor center, one of the best I've seen. The walls are Harris tweed, the chairs and the footstools are Harris tweed. There's this map of Isle of Harris on the wall there. You have this cask right outside the front door that says Felcha, which is welcome in Gaelic. And I did notice these flags as well that were outside the distillery, right at the harbor, because the distillery is located. You can see the distillery if you're taking the ferry. That's the first thing you see is the distillery. It's impossible to miss. These flags were just outside of it, and I noticed that it were their flags, the Ukrainian flag, the Greenland flag, the Mexican flag, the Canadian flag, and the Scottish flag. You guys can figure out the riddle as to why those flags were flying. But as a Canadian, it was nice to see the flag flying in solidarity. Very cool, very classy touch from the people there in Harris. The distillery shop in the visitor center is gorgeous. Lots of cool glassware you can pick up. You can pick up Isla Harris gin, sugar kelp gin. You can also pick up multiple batches of both the Herak and the Oloroso Sherry Herak. So there's kind of first and second releases, not the inaugural release per se, but just different batches of both the standard bottling, which includes, I believe, mainly ex bourbon, a bit of Fino Sherry and Oloroso Sherry, or the 100% Oloroso Sherry matured Herak. Either one. I already owned both, so I didn't pick up bottles of those at the distillery itself. Um, but you can see there's a lot there at the visitor center itself, and the people were just so welcoming and lovely. We did a tour and a tasting at the Isle of Harris Distillery. This is where they start the tour. Most tours will end with a tasting at the end of the tour. They started the tour with the tasting, and so your guide is sitting at the center of the table. I believe the table itself is Actually, I was gonna say is shaped like an H. No, it just has that horseshoe shape, but you have this lovely light fixture, at the top there, and you have these spools of Harris tweed wool, on the wall, and they actually use those as kind of like a flavor guide. And they will have them representing different fruits, different like some of them represent smoke, phenols. Some of them represent malt characteristics. It's a really cool visual representation of the flavors and aromas you're going to get in a bottle from the Isle of Harris. We tried both the regular Herak, the Oloroso Sherry Herak, as well as like Clerac new make from the Isle of Harris, which was really cool as well. My sense of taste and smell was just starting to come back, so it was nice to be able to finally pick things up again after Ardent American. It was really, really cool to start that way. And I guess in the middle there, you can see a picture of me. I was walking out of the room. Kyla was staying behind just to take a photo. I just dipped back in. She thought that was a silly photo. I don't know. Uh, you put some whiskey and me on a whiskey tour at a distillery, and you'll see some goofy stuff. Moving on to the washbacks and the stills. You see wooden washbacks there. Again, I believe they're Oregon pine. Um, Wash and spirit still. One of the most interesting parts I found though was this very unique spirit safe. It's made by G. Frilli. It's an Italian made spirit safe. And I've toured, I guess, like 15, 16 Scotch whiskey distilleries. I've seen some in Canada too. I've never seen a spirit safe that is shaped in this way. And I tried to do a little bit of quick research on it. I didn't find much on it. Um, I'm not sure if any other distillery actually has this type of spirit safe in Scotland. Very, very unique look, uniquely Harris. It's or so it seems to me. Yeah, very cool. After our tour, we visited the warehouses of the Isle of Harris Distillery, which are located right along this ocean inlet here. So you can see on the left-hand side, there's I believe there's 5 warehouses that they've built right next to the ocean. I included this picture I took of this door handle because it is this door handle is corroded from the salt spray. So yeah, obviously there's quite a ocean element to the place where these casks of whiskey are aged. Inside, we found treasure troves of casks. Our guide for this part was Harry Harrison Wood. He was one of the master blenders for Isla Harris, along with Shauna McLeod, I believe. I hope I'm remembering the names correctly here. Um, he took us through and showed us the warehouses here, and lots of cool little nuggets. For one, 2015, you have the first cask of Harris whiskey, which that year there was only 6 casks of Harris single malt actually filled, because they had a problem with licensing and they had to actually stop once they started because there was some sort of paperwork issue they had to figure out. So their first year, they only filled 6 casks, and that is the first one right there. They have a number of bespoke casks that people, private casks that people have purchased and are waiting to go ahead and bottle in the future. You also have you have wine casks here, like this one as well. They've done a full release. Of this wine cask at the distillery only. I didn't get to try that, unfortunately. I did get my nose in a few casks, though. We cracked open a few casks. They all their sherry casks, I believe, come from Jose Miguel Martin. I believe is the bodega. And one of the processes for that bodega, they do like a high pressure process with sherry where they push sherry into the actual oak under pressure to extract tannins. And then after they drain that, then they'll season it with Oloroso or Pedro Jimenez or whatever sherry cask type they're using. But I know their casks are used by people like Kilhoman and others, quite common and quite largely considered high quality sherry casks. The type of casks I saw for the most part were Buffalo Trace by far was the highest proportion of casks in the warehouse. So Buffalo Trace ex bourbon casks, Heaven Hill ex bourbon casks. I saw some of those Chateau Biac sweet white wine casks as Greg is clearing up for me here. The cask in the middle is a special release with sweet white wine Chateau Biac. It was distributed here, but too expensive and quickly sold out. Sad I missed it. Oh man. Yeah, I was hoping to try something like that at the distillery, and I just didn't have an opportunity. So we both missed out on that, Greg. But there are more casks of it in the warehouse, so there will be future releases, I believe, of that Chateaubriand. Um, you could see quite a difference in refill sherry casks versus first fill too. Just on the outside, like the rings were rusted. The oak was dark and almost dirty looking compared to the brand new ones, which were just spotless. Very cool. Um, but yeah, by far the highest proportion of casks, Buffalo Trace, and then Heaven Hill casks kind of seemed about the same amount as the sherry casks. Even more, one peculiar cast, I mean, yeah, actually, here's what I was talking about, the sherry cast. You see on the left-hand side, there's these, clean looking, basically brand new, Jose Miguel Martin, sherry casts at the bottom, and you see above them, there's those darker colored ones. Fascinating the change in how the casts look. On the right-hand side, and I guess I should actually back up here. Before you go to the right-hand side, if you notice the first cast I walked in, they're on their sides, much more like a dunnage style of like sitting them, laying them on the staves as opposed on their heads. These aren't dunnage casts. There's no earthen floor, nothing like that. But it is interesting that some of the casts are laid on their side like that, and some of the casts are laid on their ends, like these ones in the middle. My understanding is that there are differences in how the whiskey ages because of the headspace in the cask for oxidative aging process in the casks when they're laid on their side as opposed to the cask ends. And there's also different, I guess, complications with angel share or leaking with that as well. I don't know which one is better. I'm not really educated enough to know that, and someone who actually works in a distillery would know way more about that than me. Back to this picture on the right. Those were an oddball. Those are Dad's Hat rye ex-rye casks. So they have actually filled some ex-rye casks at the distillery. And one of the things that Harry told me was that it actually seems to be slow to develop in those casks. Isla Harris as a distillate, like the Herak single malt, it seems to develop much quicker in Buffalo Trace casks, or even much more, I guess, predictably in a sherry cask. Those Dad's Hat ex-rye casks, though, are kind of an interesting little spin on it. I'm not sure if it's going to work out and produce excellent quality whiskey, but when it comes out, I would love to try it. So yeah, you can watch for that. One day there might be an ex-rye cask release from Isla Harris. And we did crack open some casks in the warehouse here. We cracked open, gosh, let's see, 4? I believe we cracked open 4 casks. And here I am with the bung remover itself, learning how to do it clockwise. Once you put the tip in, the end, the pointy end into the bung, a couple clockwise twists, and then you just rip it, and the bung rips right out. There with the Valanche as well, pulling some whiskey out. That was an ex Buffalo Trace, ex Buffalo Trace cast that we pulled that whiskey specifically out of. There's all that there is actually a Heaven Hill cast, the one in the very center there, ex Heaven Hill cast. So ex Heaven Hill ex bourbon and ex Buffalo Trace ex bourbon. We opened up both. What's in my glass on the right is that ex Heaven Hill Buffalo ex bourbon cask. And I think there's one more here. Yeah, that's me filling. I reused the bottles from the Ardent American samples I got from Colin McKenzie to fill what I couldn't finish of my glasses into those samples so I could bring them home. And that cask right there is the one I ripped open, the ex Buffalo Trace cask I put into the former sample bottle for the 80 core range. Very, very cool whiskeys to get to try, and very blessed, very thankful to have an opportunity like that. Thanks to people like Harrison Wood, Harry, I'll just call you Harry from this point on this video, and Peter Kwasniewski, who helped me set this up. I have those samples on hand here, so I'm going to pull those out and we can possibly pour a couple of them that sound interesting. I can tell you more about what each one is. I'm going to pull this bottle of Isle Harris, the Herak whiskey out, just one because it's gorgeous, but two, I think it's a good representation of the brand itself as we're talking about them. I will show off here. I did keep the bung of the cask I ripped open. It's split, so it's in two. But if I smell this, it still smells of the actual warehouse itself. It's wild the way these things work, and you can see kind of like there's this line, this edge of where the whiskey actually permeated the bung up to. Really cool, really unique, and possibly once in a lifetime experience I had at the Isle of Harris, and I'm just so thankful that they were able to welcome me in such a way. So cool, yeah. So I'll pull out some of these samples here. So I do have more I need to talk about on Isle of Harris. There's some complicated things I need to talk about, and there's also some really cool stuff I want to talk about. This one here is the first cast we opened. This was a Heaven Hill 2018. So 2018 to 2025. It's either going to be what? It's going to be 6 or 7-year-old whiskey, that Heaven Hill one. This is a Buffalo Trace sample here, 2018. So again, same age. There is an ex Blanton's ex bourbon cask sample here from 2018, same age, but just a different spin with it being an ex Blanton's barrel. And then the one I opened, which was an ex Buffalo Trace cask, and it's actually the youngest. It's the 2019. That one, actually, I should back up a little bit. Isla Harris seems to be about to crank up their single cask program. They have marked a bunch of different casks in the warehouse to be pulled for the purpose of being bottled as single casks for different markets or for different clubs or stores. And so I did notice, if we go back to these photos here, this one here, it has this star on it. That was to indicate that, in Harry's opinion, it was a particularly good cask. That is the one I opened. And I asked about that one because I saw the star. I said, "What does the star mean?" And so that is actually the 2019 Buffalo Trace cask. We back up. There's an X on this one here. It says single cask. That one is slated to be pulled. That Heaven Hill ex-bourbon cask is slated to be pulled as a single cask as well. I believe La Maison de Whisky had a single cask for Whiskey Live Paris last year. Greg, I think you tried that. I think Serge tried it as well. I read his review. But they are getting ready to launch what seems to be a fairly robust single cask program, which I'm very excited about, because right now the only two Isla Harris whiskeys I can purchase and put on my shelf, place on my shelf, are the standard, the core bottling of the Herak, and then the Herak sherry cask. I'd like to have more options because I really do love their whiskey. And then the other thing I was going to mention is these two casks right here. So the one on the left with the X on it, with the kind of the dirtier barrel end, and the one on the right. These are both ex Buffalo Trace bourbon barrels. However, these just happen to be Harry and Shauna's favorite casks in the warehouse. These are their number 1 and number 2 casks. And it's interesting because I was told that these casks, they actually started off not developing the way they would have hoped. They didn't actually particularly love these casks to start off with. But given more time to age, these actually took off quite in quite a nice direction. And they went from being, I guess, not good enough to go into the inaugural batches to the point where they're actually the best casks in the warehouse, which is pretty cool. It's pretty awesome what oxidative aging in whiskey casks can do to a whiskey, both through additive elements and subtractive elements. So from not good enough to make the cut to best in the warehouse, these two casks. One here is actually, I'll do it this way. So you see, left is Harry's favorite, right is Shauna's favorite. I'm not going to look at the cast numbers very closely right now because I also have, thanks to the generosity of Harry, 100 ml vials of each of those casks. So I'll read you the specifics here. They both are 8-year-old single malt from Buffalo Trace. I believe one was 2016 and one is 2017. If I go back to my pictures and look closely, one's 58% ABV, one's 57% ABV. So I have those samples as well, both from ex-bourbon casks, and those would be the oldest examples of Harris whiskey that I think are out there. I don't think there's anything bottled at 8 years old at this moment. And Greg, I believe it was Tim as well. You guys were talking about whether or not the Isla Harris 10-year-old will be better than the Ardnamurchan AD10, this bottle right here. Well, I intend to hope to find out. So here's the thing, guys. We can go ahead and we can check out the ex Blanton's cask. We can check the ex bourbon or do a comparison of the Heaven Hill, Buffalo Trace, and Blanton's casks of cask samples here. We can also go ahead and try Harry and Shauna's favorite casks in the warehouse and get a better look at what Harris distillate might be closer to 10 years old. So let me know in the comments what you think would be more interesting at this time. Gonna catch up on the comments while you guys think that through. Let's see here. Let's go here. Or actually, Michael Torres, really awesome picks. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, man, it's tough not to get good picks in a place so beautiful. Greg, never been there, but saw pics and video, talked to the founder in Paris, etc. And I'm an early fan of their gin before they even produced whiskey. And yeah, you were right, Greg. It was a perfect place to go on our honeymoon. It was, we both absolutely fell in love with the Isla Harris and Lewis. I don't want to cut them short too, but we stayed on the Isla Harris side in Sculpey, and yeah, it's just a gorgeous place. Big fan of the place, of the people, and of the whiskey. Sugar Kitty, life is short. Eat dessert first. Happy tasting. Happy tour. You know what? That's a good call with the way they did it. It was. I haven't done a distillery tour that did the tasting first. I've done it where they did it along the tour at different intervals. I've done it at the end. I hadn't done one where it starts with the tasting and then goes into the tour. I think people were happier. I think that's a good way to do it. Let's see here. Greg, sounds like you highlighted Shauna in a Women in Whiskey videos. That would be a great series. I should go back and check that out. Whiskey from Whiskey Heaven. Walking through a warehouse like that does make you feel like you're in whiskey heaven. That is absolutely the case. Yeah, famous rare samples. Those samples, man, I'm excited to tear into these at some point. Talking about those ex-rye casks, I wonder if the Dad's Hat were filled with maple syrup at one point. Do they do a maple syrup whiskey at Dad's Hat? If so, that adds just a completely like oddball twist to the Dad's Hat casks. Interesting. Thanks for throwing that out there, Sugar Kitty. Michael Torres, straight from the cast, must have been something special. It really was. Again, I'm not sure that's something I could ever replicate again. Just a wonderful opportunity, just from the people you meet in whiskey, and that's what whiskey is about. It's about as much about people as it is about the whiskey itself. Talking about Whiskey Live Paris, yes, Matt, nice one, but difficult in Whiskey Live Paris show context, so didn't connect with it, though it was not bad. It is tough at shows to really get a full sense of a whiskey, to the point where you could actually have a reasonable critique. Cliff, I'm late, damn it. Oh, welcome here, Cliff. No matter what time you show up, it's good to have you here, buddy. You're out on the was out on the deck watching Inverness harness racing. Oh, horse racing. Very cool. I've never actually I was gonna say I've never been to horse races, if that's what the harness racing is. I believe the harness racing would be horse races. I've never been to horse races, except for I actually poured Macaloni's whiskey with, Rich at, I believe it's called Whiskey Smoke. It's a cigar and horse racing event where it's also a whiskey tasting, and all these different whiskey producers are at Hastings Racetrack in Vancouver. And so the horse races are going on in the background as you're pouring whiskey and talking whiskey to people. It was actually quite a fun event. Yeah, and that's definitely a unique event too. Let's see here. Greg's saying any one of those samples, I'll be curious of Matt, to be honest. And Sugar Kitty, Dad's hat is from Pennsylvania in the town my grandmother lived. They definitely have experiments with their whiskey and maple syrup. Okay, interesting. Stephen Gibson. Hi, Matt. Hope you're well. I too am joining. Hey, thanks for joining us here, Stephen. Good to hear from you, man. Yeah, join late, join early. It doesn't matter. Honestly, just glad to have you guys here, early or late. All right, I got to make a decision then. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour out a bit of the Blanton's Heaven Hill and Buffalo Trace casks. I think that's what I'm going to do. See if I can notice any differences. That's not something I was able to do in the warehouse itself, because the warehouse we're doing one glass at a time. Um, but I think I will pour out a little bit of each of those. Oh, might not have enough glasses for that. How about this? We're going to do the Blantons because that is unique, along with the Buffalo Trace, and see if we can pick out some differences in those. Yeah. And not just any Buffalo Trace. The Buffalo Trace cast I opened myself. All right. So, pouring out first the 2018 Blanton's Isla Harris single malt ex-bourbon barrel. Got a lot of whiskey on the table, so I'm only going to pour very small samples here. It's the Blanton's. This is going to be the Buffalo Trace ex-bourbon cask I opened. We'll be curious to see how different these profile, because at the time I did feel like they profiled quite differently. I think, much like you, Greg, I have become a bona fide Isla Harris fanatic. I really love the brand. I love what they were trying to do in Harris with employing so many people in the community. Everything at the distillery shop itself, it's employing local, potters, local glassmakers. For the Isla Harris gin, I think they're using locally foraged, like sugar kelp, seaweed. Um, the number of people that were employed by the distillery, I think they were getting close to 50, and they really made the social distillery, that concept, a big part of what they were trying to bring jobs to a small island community where jobs are so scarce. I love all those things about Isla Harris. Literally days before I arrived at Harris, it was announced that they had to make some redundancies. They had to cut some people's jobs, and actually quite a significant number of people, in order to cut costs, because the distillery financially just wasn't where it needed to be. That's my take as to the reason why. But if you're losing money, one of the places they look first is cutting salaries, cutting jobs. Which, for a distillery that seemed to model itself off of like kind of being like the Brook Laddie of the like the Outer Hebrides, if you will, um, trying to become one of the largest local employers on the island. Um, that's really crushing to hear that it's come to this point. We know there's a whiskey slowdown. We know that this stuff isn't selling as quickly as it was during COVID, during that kind of height, that the high highs of that time. Um, so it sounds like they have had sales slower than they were expecting or hoping for. And so a lot of the people that helped me make my whiskey journey to Harris, sadly aren't with the distillery anymore. And that is a little crushing. Um I do think about those people, and I hope that they are able to find suitable employment on the island, or if they're going elsewhere, that this is but a small speed bump in the road of life. But um, yeah, it was tough to process that as I'm about to visit this place. In talking with some of them, there is a real understanding, at least for one of the people I talked to, that it was necessary for the health of the distillery and to make sure that what they've built there um, continues on and becomes what it could be. And it sounds like there's a commitment to hire people back if times do get better, if they want to come back. Um, but yeah, it definitely puts a damper on it. In any event, um, yeah, I wish nothing but the best for the Isla Harris distillery because again, I really believe in what they're trying to do there. I believe their whiskey is phenomenal, and yeah, I want to see nice things happen for nice people. That said, turning to these whiskeys and the comments, Stephen Gibson had another comment there. Very nice selection of fine malts on display. Have you crossed the pond again? Yes, I did. We made our second pilgrimage to Scotland for our honeymoon here, Stephen, in May. Quite a rushed trip because we had to change our plans, but we did make it away across the pond once again, and we brought back some whiskeys like this Springbank handfill, this Kilkerran heavily peated single cask from Oloroso. We had a great time, and we're just at the point where we're at the Isla Harris warehouses, cracking into some casks. All right, ex Blanton's cask, ex bourbon barrel, 2018 Harris single malt, lightly peated to about I think 12 ppm, 12 to 15 ppm. Remind me to talk about the local peat with Isla Harris too. Some coastal elements on the nose, a little bit of that like seashell and kind of like sweet tart or rockets candies sort of vibe. There's a sweetness, confectionery sweetness to it, but it's got that mineralic note and edge to it. I find that in the Ardnamurchan 80 core range, the core release. Light peat note there. Bit like graham crackers too. Bit of spice and almost like a root beer note on this Blanton's cask. Interesting. Gonna touch on the nose for the Buffalo Trace cask 2019 before we go to the palates. Greg, for the record, they're releasing two travel retail expressions for the first time, a higher proof version of their gin and a 52% version of their Herak. Well, hot damn, I guess I need to go traveling. Okay, okay. And yeah, it's sad it happens to Isla Harris given their effort to work for craft and local employment. Hope it'll be better for all soon. Likewise, Greg. Likewise. Ian Sunderland checking in. Good morning, Ian, or good evening, wherever you are. At Whiskey School, we put 5-year-old Longrow into Mombaziac. Hey, there you go. Yeah, the casks are kind of wild, man. You never know what type of cask you're gonna come across. I've only had one whiskey from a Mombaziac cask, and that was a Brook Laddie, and it was actually quite excellent. Was a little worried, but it worked out marvelously. Longrow from Mombaziac, I think, could be fantastic stuff. I'm sure you will be keen to try it since you were one of the people who helped fill it. Let's see here. I think we filled almost 20 casks in September 2024. Okay, so 5-year-old. I'm guessing it was ex bourbon recast into Montbazillac. I wonder how long those are going to sit for, and if they're going to just if they're going to do a release with them, or if they're going to wind up cage bottlings. Interesting, very interesting. The casks smelled amazing. I found it to be quite a funky wine style paired with the Bruichladdich distillate. All right, on the nose for the Buffalo Trace 2019 Isla Harris single malt. Oh, way more sweetness. Honey, ginger, pears. Less of the coastal like sea breeze note, but still those like Rockets candies. The peat's there too. More expressive nose than the 2018 Blanton's cask. Interesting. Liking that. Some like lemon peel too. Yeah, more expressive than the Blanton's. The nose on the Blanton's for sure. Taking a sip of the Blanton's cask. Hmm. It's just gorgeous whiskey. What they're making there. If I had to guess, this is close to 60% ABV. Hmm. Butterscotch, maybe shortbread cookies. That the peat level seems lower than I'm used to with the actual inaugural bottling. Perhaps some water will express it a bit more. It's almost like some burnt caramel, perhaps molasses. Even actually, molasses would be a good call for a tasting note on the back end here. Crisp, clean, clear malt notes, malt sugars. Gonna try the ex Buffalo Trace cask now. Hmm. 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 Way more going on the palate. Um, Definitely get that coastal edge. More fruits, more orchard fruits, a bit of citrus. Um, that confectionery note too. Bit of tablet, almost like a fudge note. And then this really pretty background trace of peat smoke leading into just like this really lovely finish. I don't know what it is. Like it is so incredible when we're talking single casks. How different casks that are legitimately sitting on pallets beside each other. Um, how different they can be. And a lot of people would get excited, like, "Oh, it's an ex Blanton's cask." The Blanton's cask is not as good as the Buffalo Trace cask, and it's older as well. Not by much, but by a little. The Buffalo Trace 2019 cask that Harry put a star on, that is a winner. Um, I might be able to dig out the cast number on that. When it goes to market, we might be able to see that one and see where that winds up. If it winds up anywheres within my grasp, I'm buying a bottle, maybe two. One, just because of the sentimentality of that of having cracked that cask open myself and trying it, but it's actually just a really good example of this distillate type without any sherry added to it, just pure ex bourbon Buffalo Trace barrel. A lot more going on this than the Blant's, and it's not to say that the ex Blanton's barrel
2018 Herak single malt is bad. That's not the case at all. It's just that this 2019 was exceptional. Hmm. Yeah, I'm in love with that. That is fantastic. Again, much fruitier than the Blanton's cask was. You actually get a bit of the coastal influence, and it has, again, that wonderful background wisp of smoke. Loving that. Loving that. Let's check out the casts here. The comments. So we were talking last about the Montbazillac casks that were filled with Long Row by Ian Sunderland at Springbank Whiskey School. Let's see here. Ian saying you're miles behind at the moment on the Springbank Demi-Johns. Okay. Well, Springbank Demi-Johns were pretty good. That makes sense of why you'd bring up the cast types that you came across at Springbank. Yeah, there was some wild stuff there. Stephen Gibson, ironically, we are experiencing higher temperatures, which is rare to say the least. It was very warm when we went to Scotland in May. It was like 24 degrees up in Harris. It was absolutely insane. We couldn't have asked for better weather. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Moving on. Steven, how was your Campbell Town Malts Festival? Looked like you had a ball. Oh my goodness. That is one of the festivals I do mean to go to at some point. Ian, you're at the Malts Festival. Tell us about it, buddy. That's yeah, that is on the bucket list for me. I don't need to necessarily do Fagile, but I need to do the Malts Festival one year. Montbazillac is a bit like Sauternes, Greg says, but can come across maybe as more buttery. In my limited experience with this wine, I tend to prefer Sauternes or Court de Cham. Not familiar with that one, Greg. Very, very interesting, though. Let's see here. Kyle Whippert. Welcome here, buddy. Regular Buffalo Trace is better than Blanton's at the moment anyway, as a bourbon. Better aged product with more balance. Yeah, it could be that completely. That's coming through on the casks. I mean, they swear by Buffalo Trace barrels at the Harris Distillery, Isle Harris. As I mentioned, they are majority Buffalo Trace barrels, and that's not going to be by a mistake. They probably found when they compared the Heaven Hill barrels, the Buffalo Trace barrels, and I think there's one other type of ex bourbon barrels they've used. When they compare the three, I'm sure they found that their spirit just suits the Buffalo Trace barrels better than any. Michael Torres says Buffalo Trace hits too hard for me, not really my style. Um, yeah, I've enjoyed Buffalo Trace as like a well whiskey, like one you just keep on the bar for whenever someone comes over who really loves bourbon. But I'm not much of a bourbon person specifically myself. But I do appreciate Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare. I don't have a bottle of Blanton's in my house. I don't know if I ever will. But moving on, Whiskey Mechanic. Hello from Scotland. You did well. I have the 8010 and Cadenhead's Kilcairn 5. I'm loving the Living Souls 99 and 1. I can't wait to get my hands on that 99 and 1. Oh man, what a wild thing to have happen. I think I was talking earlier about whiskey accidents, and that's another one of those whiskey accidents that becomes, well, a wonderful whiskey accident that we benefit from. Very, very cool that you've got those bottles on hand. I am adoring this whiskey here. Um, if I'm starving for Isla Harris content to put on the channel, I might go ahead and give you a comparison of these two casks here, Shauna's favorite and Harry's favorite. Again, thank you so much for setting those aside for me, Harry, those samples. That was really above and beyond. Two 8-year-old examples of Isla Harris whiskey. I've got too much whiskey on this table to pour out much more. I think there might be one more bottle that we pour out that we'll have to deal with here. But let me cut to the chase. We're coming up on 3 hours here. We got to make some tracks. A few more photos from Harris. It really is a stunning place. The beaches, Los Kintyre, as well as others, are just gorgeous. We went on a hike to a remote beach. We were the only ones there, and you just never want to leave. Honestly, if I could, I'd go right back to Harris right now. Beautiful place. And there's starfish all over this one beach that we were at. We went to go find Highland Coos at this beach, but instead we found dozens of starfish. Very cool place. I Yeah, as you guys can tell, I'm quite obsessed with Harris. The Harris peat. Okay, so we actually found people harvesting peat on our way to that beach that you just saw pictures of. So they're cutting it. It's being done in a traditional fashion because I could see that they had the cutters and all the different implements out there to cut off these slabs of peat from the landscape. But you can see it's right beside the water. They're stacking it out here in the air to dry. They have some on the pallets out there to dry as well. There is a certain amount of Isla Harris single malt that has been made with local peat. I'm not sure if it's going to be a distillery exclusive only, or if there's going to be a limited release that goes out to the globe. But they did a limited or multiple limited runs of spirit using local peat. And as you guys know, if you've joined me on the channel in the past, um, I have a particular fascination with local peat and the different flavor profiles you can get from it. They don't typically use local peat, not in their core range, but there is a small amount of casks, small number of casks set aside that have been used for this experiment. And I would love to get my hands on that one day. If you are close to the distillery when it's released, I'd highly suggest you pick up a bottle of it because that would be very unique bottle of Harris whiskey that I don't know if they have plans to do it again in the future, but keep your eyes open for that in the future. Keep your ear to the ground. And if you happen to come across one, check it out. Moving on. So we took the ferry from Lewis over to Ullapool. That is where I found my bottle of Thompson Brothers Mystery Malt. And we made the big drive down towards Inverness with a stop at Urquhart Castle in between. So we visited the castle. On our way to the castle, we came across the Glen Ord Distillery, which is one of the three single malt distilleries that provides whiskey to make the Singleton. Obviously, the Singleton is a single malt, but uses three different distilleries to go ahead and brand that malt in to be bottled as that malt in different markets. It's confusing to me why they do that. In any event, one of the most popular, highest selling whiskeys out there, but it's a bit of a cheater because it's three distilleries, not one. Um, what I noticed is the exterior of the building is rather gorgeous, and there's a maltings right beside it, the Glenard maltings. Um, However, when you walk in, it has this hollow, soulless feeling. It's been very much Diageo-fied. Diageo has this ability to try and turn these distilleries into these Disneyland-esque experiences. You can see kind of maybe the pictures aren't big enough, but everything is very stylistically done in a way to appeal to people's eyes first. It just it feels odd having visited so many distilleries, having visited places like Springbank. It is like the antithesis to Springbank, visiting this distillery center. So those are some casks in a warehouse. They actually have it's kind of a cool touch. They do have a piece of the wall that's removed and a glass panel installed, so you can see some casks I'm assuming in their warehouse. Um, it all is just a bit of theater. It feels like I do think they make good whiskey at Glenord, and I did try their hand fill, the bottle your own bottling that they had on offer there. It was 11-year-old from a rejuvenated hogshead. And it was good. It was very much on the dessert tones, very much on the toffee caramels, butterscotch, a lot of dessert tones. Interesting whiskey. That said, the price I believe was like 125, 135 pounds for an 11-year-old single malt, and that was just too much. Um, and I found that to be a common theme at any of the Diageo distilleries or Diageo visitor centers that I visited. The price they wanted for handfills was just astronomical. and maybe that goes to that, like, hey, let's hit them with glitz and glamour at the distillery, make them feel like this is such a cool experience, and maybe they'll buy the expensive bottle of 11-year-old single malt. I don't know. Very cool, little, like, I love the exterior of the building. That was very lovely, and the people there were great. I enjoyed the whiskey. I did not leave with a bottle of it. I already had too many bottles as it was, but cool to see. We made a quick stop in Fours at the Ben Romick Distillery, one of my favorites, with that iconic red chimney stack. Um, Very cool to be there, and see that. I did try this Ben Romick hand-filled distillery exclusive. I believe it was a 10 or 11-year-old ex-bourbon cask. Honestly, I found it very similar to the 10 or 11 year old ex-bourbon, first fill ex-bourbon casks that we've gotten here in the Canadian market. I've tried, I think 3. I've tried the Sierra Springs one, Angry Otter one, and I believe one more. I would love, I would absolutely love to go back and do a proper tour and warehouse tasting at Ben Romick. One of the first videos I actually released on the channel, I released 3 videos on the first day I set the channel live. One was a review of Ledgig 10-year-old. One was the Christmas list, Scotch whiskey Christmas list, and the other one was a review of the Ben Romick 10-year-old. It's just the most replaced bottle on my shelf, along with that Ledgig 10, and I just adore their spirit and what they're making at Ben Romick. So I had to stop as we were passing by. In the distillery visitor center, you can see they still have the Ben Romick 1998, I believe it is, barrel one, from when they restarted the distillery after renovating it. Very cool experience to stop in there. See some comments here. So glad you enjoyed the trip there. Yeah, thanks again, Greg, for helping to point us in that direction. Harris and Lewis was absolutely the best decision we could have made on the honeymoon. You think there should emphasize more about the fact they use local peat? Yeah, I think they should consider doing a run again. Honestly, that would be pretty cool. Michael Torres, Singleton, my first single malt. I think it's a lot of people's first single malts. I know early in my journey, I had a bottle of Singleton, right around the time where Tailfire came out, I believe. Whiskey Mechanic Glenord is a favorite of mine. There are a lot of good independent bottlings. Shamed it's owned by Diageo. Yeah, I mean, I guess Diageo did do a service to the whiskey world for keeping a lot of distilleries open, but they also closed a lot of distilleries. Diageo sometimes feels like a necessary evil in the whiskey world, but I don't know. Ask me next week and maybe I'll feel otherwise. But yeah, I agree. Glenord has some fantastic independent bottlings. I've had a fantastic raw cask from Blackadder. So love a good Glenord. Craig with a breakdown here. The Singleton equals a Thrusk, Duffton, Glendolyn, and Glenord. But for some reason, they highlight only a few of them and for different markets, and probably did stop some of them. Yeah, it's just it's an odd thing. Thrusk and Glendolyn for me are underrated. Indie give it more justice, as is the case with so many of these distilleries that just get buried behind the marketing machines that are companies like Diageo. Stephen Gibson, I recommended the Johnny Walker Cellar Tour for anyone who plans to visit Edinburgh. So many cast strength high age statement offerings, which you struggle to pick up unless you island hop and cover the space side. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's why I couldn't really rag on the Johnny Walker experience too much. I think it's worth stopping into if you're visiting Edinburgh. And yeah, Ben Romick, you hope to be there soon if you win. I hope you win, Greg. You're talking about the Ben Romick champions. You know what would be even better if we both won? I did apply as well, and so it'd be cool if we actually got to meet for in person for the first time at Ben Romick as Ben Romick champions. That would be wild, buddy. Let's hope that's what happens. Michael Torres, whoa, Singleton is supposed to be a value single malt. No idea why it's so expensive there. Yeah, it seems to be angled towards those who are visiting. Those Ben Romick single cast sherry matured are so good. Yes, the Strath on Vancouver Island had a fantastic one. The Whiskey Rant was great too. I want to try that new Kensington Wine Market. I think is it 18 or 19 years old from a first fill sherry cask. Yeah, phenomenal stuff. Whiskey mechanic. Diageo are too greedy with their prices. In the UK, special releases are showing up all over the place at massive discounts. You got the Lagavulin Distillers Edition for 32. I'd buy the Lagavulin Distillers Edition for £32. Just saying, I would buy it at that price. Yeah, they seem to jump the shark a little bit with their pricing, and now the whiskey, the worm is turning. I don't know. Their pricing strategy is baffling to me. Kirby and Calgary, I have a Ben Romick cast strength from Co-op and is absolutely delicious. Not surprised. Not surprised at all. Hard to love Diageo, but hard to avoid them too. They own too many great names. Yep, they are the caretakers of a lot of great distilleries that we love. Agreed. Love the signatory 100 proof Glendolin. That 100 proof series has taken the whiskey world by storm, guys. Greg, oh, cool, Matt. It would be absolutely awesome. Let's cross our fingers. Yeah, let's cross our fingers, buddy. And then some love for Dufton, Ord, and Taninic from Stephen Gibson. Yeah, oftentimes just whiskey distilleries and malts that are ignored. I especially of those, I really like Taninic. I think on a good day, Taninic can come off a lot like Kleinleash, and I love my Kleinleash. When I was in Fours, I also made a habit stopping at the Gordon MacPhail store over in Elgin. The store was quite something. Definitely an interesting entrance with this quote on the wall. I mean, they have such a history. Of course, they're going to want to reach back into the history, but the it almost feels like a whiskey library, a whiskey archive with these old Glenlivets and Glen Grants and all these fantastic old Gordon MacPhail bottlings that you can buy there. But you can also try some of them there. And one of the whiskeys, the one on the right there, a 1952 Glen Grant, that was part of their standard 100 years of whiskey whiskey tasting, which was actually really reasonably priced. I think it was like 25 or 30 pounds or something like that to go in. One of the whiskeys you got to try was this 1952 Glen Grant. Lots of different bottlings on the shelves, including a 1982 St. Magdalene that was bottled back in 2012. That was 600 pounds, which if you've seen the price of St. Magdalene these days, is actually a really fair price. What I thought was kind of interesting is that St. Magdalene was this old school bottle label, old series from Gordon MacPhail. I also found these whiskey miniatures, and the story I got was that they were looking through one of the warehouses and they found a box of old whiskeys that were boxed up that had gotten lost in the actual warehouse. And some of these were like a 20-plus-year-old Tormore. One of them was a 20-plus-year-old, I think, Tomatin. And then there was a couple bottles that I happened to pick up a few bottles of, which were I believe, a 23-year-old Bladnoch from 1993 and an old blended Scotch by the name of Glen Calder. It was a Gordon MacPhail blended Scotch, and I just had to try it. I was like, it's an old blended Scotch. It's been sitting in a miniature bottle with a good fill level still, so the seal's still intact. It was sitting there for like what I guess since 2016, so like 9 years in the warehouse, just waiting. So I think that might be what happened with that St. Magdalene. 600 pounds. I could have been tempted if I wasn't so broke from everything else we spent our money on the honeymoon. But if you're going past the Gordon MacPhail shop, they might still have that St. Magdalene 1982 on the shelf right now. Actually, speaking of, it's on the left right there. So that wooden box, that kind of yellow and brown tan label, very cool bottling just to see laying on the shelf. What I learned is that you never know what you're going to find in the Gordon MacPhail whiskey shop. I did try a pour of a 1994 Ardmore from Ex-Bourbon there. I love Ardmore, pre-2001 Ardmore. It was lovely stuff. I don't expect anything less from Gordon MacPhail. If you're in Elgin, do stop by the Gordon MacPhail shop. They have a lot of other bottlings too. They have a full whiskey shop. I asked them about it because they had Kilkerran 8-year-old cask strength on the shelf. They had an old Vintners trilogy series, Bowmore. They had old Brookladdies. They had whiskey sponge bottlings from Decadent Drams. I asked, I was like, you guys are selling a lot of other people's whiskey here. And he said, well, they're either going to buy it from us or they're going to buy it somewhere else. So why not buy it from us? was like, that makes a lot of sense. Um, so yeah, I definitely agreed with that notion there. So if you're going past through Elgin, check out the cathedral because one, that's stunning. The ruins of the old cathedral, but also do stop off at the Gordon MacPhail shop. It's quite something. Peter White, a lot of Diageo special releases end up on clearance in Ontario. Yeah, they do here in BC as well, Peter. Sugar Kitty, Tininik, and Dalyun, very different targets. Flora and Fauna distilleries. Yeah. Greg, John Glazer loved to use Tininik for some reason, indeed, and I agree with Matt about Klein Leash. And you'd love to go to the Gordon MacPhail shop. Yeah. Honestly, Gordon MacPhail, whiskey porn. You're right, Steve. It's just like you just drool over the bottles. Greg chiming in on the St. Magdalene is awesome indeed. A fair price. I've sampled from a stunning Cadenhead bottling. Just saying, if you make it there, we'll share it. Excellent. If you make a Ben Rogue Champions, I'll make sure to bring something special from here too, Greg. If we both go to Ben Romick. Whiskey Mechanic, Peter, interesting. They started here with huge sales on Amazon, Lagavulin and Talisker bottles. We're seeing them at independent retailers like Royal Mile Whiskies. I did notice Lagavulin deep discounts for their 12-year-old cask strengths on Amazon in the UK. Wish we had those kind of discounts over here, Whiskey Mechanic. And very dangerous shop. Yeah, it truly is. All right, moving on. As we made our way back to Edinburgh, we had a whirlwind tour from Inverness back down, and we were only in Inverness for one evening. Made our way back down to Edinburgh. Kyla loves Edinburgh, so we wanted to spend more time there. So we cut through the Speyside, the Highlands and the Speyside to get back there. And one of the stops we made was at Glenallachie. And what really stood out to me with Glenallachie is just number one, how many warehouses are on site? I couldn't count the number of warehouses they have there, which just made me think exactly how many casks of whiskey do they have? We are never going to run short on Macallan. I do think not Macallan, sorry, on Glenallachie. I do think they have an incredible number of Glenallachie casks there. I tried the Glenallachie Oloroso hand fill. It was quite excellent. I would have taken a bottle home of that had I any more room in the luggage. Well worth a stop at Glenallachie, if only just to see how many casks they have. Craig, as always, we never see time fly at Matt's live show, right? Yeah, we've crept over 3 hours somehow. We are getting to the end of it, but and I do need we need to finish this off soon. But yeah, still going strong here, Greg. If someone in the chat knows, type in how many different warehouses that Glenallachie has right now. It's got to be something like 16 warehouses or 12 warehouses. It's quite the site, and it makes me feel like Glenallachie is not going to be a rare thing to see on our shelves, though. Oddly enough, because they won an award for best single malt in the world, they had plastered that on the side of their building. They were sold out of the Glenallachie 12-year-old that won them the award. They had the 15-year-old. I think they had the 10 cask strength. They did not have the Glenallachie 12-year-old. That was the thing at the distillery that was sold out and that people were coming in looking for, which is just wild to me. I mean, I love the 12-year-old, but it's just like, okay, people are wanting to get their hands on that exact bottling. Very interesting. Michael Torres heard a lot of good stuff about Glenallachie. What do you think about it? I've done some Glenallachie reviews. I like the 15-year-old. I like the 12-year-old. I'm really loving the Michael Torres series, their peated releases that they've come out with. And I think we're going to see a lot of interesting things as they get to the Glenallachie spirit that was actually distilled by Billy Walker with longer fermentations. Yeah. I like Glenallachie. A little bit of a cask show sometimes, like more about cask than spirit. But a lot of people enjoy that style, and when I've had it in my glass, I've enjoyed it. So excited for the future for Glenallachie. But here, Sugar Kitty came up with the information. A quick search says 16 warehouses. 16 warehouses filled with whiskey. Wow. Beware, though, they're owned by Brown Foreman, also who announced cuts in job production. Um, really, they're owned by Brown Foreman? I thought that was Glendronach, Ben Riach, and Glen Glassaw. I didn't think Glenallachie was owned by Brown Foreman. Huh. And yeah, 16 warehouses is a lot. Some more information here from what I found. ChatGPT, Glenallachie has 16 warehouses on site, 12 racked, 2 palletized, and rest traditional. So I guess that would make 4 traditional. No, 12 racked, 2 palletized, and the rest traditional. Apparently, they're maturing over 50,000 casks there. It's a lot. That's a lot of whiskey slumbering in casks, waiting to be bottled one day. That damn turbo bottle is all but impossible to get here. It is a tough bottle to come across. Super tough to come across. Glenallachie weighing in, Sugar Kitty weighing in, Glenallachie. Very heavy sherry. Good ones with good sherry. Mediocre ones with mediocre sherry. Yeah, if you like sherry, I noticed a lot of Germans at Glenallachie, and I noticed that even the washroom signs had English, they had French, they had German. So I think they get a lot of German visitors, which I do know it's a bit of a um, stereotype that the Germans love their sherried whiskey. Let's see here. Oh, and the cooperage cuts for jobs. There were cooperage cuts in Brown Foreman's portfolio, but they also, I think they sent some workers home, went down to like one shift where they were sharing workers between Glen Glassaw and Ben Riach. I believe they were sharing distillery workers. But yeah, and Gary K is saying, "Oh, welcome here, Gary. You're a fan of the 18-year-old." Yeah, the Glenelg 18-year-olds. There's been a number of different batches. It seems to be getting darker and darker on the batches. I have only had the 18-year-old once. It's one of those ones I haven't bought a bottle of yet. But yeah, Glenelg, well worth the visit, if only just to see the warehouses and to have a sample taste of the hand fills and see if you want to bring one home with you. Stopped into Glenfarclas, had to again, an overwhelming number of warehouses there, but they are one of the oldest distilleries in the country, as well as a family-owned distillery, which is pretty cool. Tried their Spirit of Speyside. I think it was 14 or 15-year-old. It was a good whiskey. Not all that indifferent from or dissimilar, not indifferent, dissimilar from the Kensington Wine Market 15-year-old that is available over here. Really enjoyed it. They had this kind of peculiar pot still in their visitors center that originates from the Leith Distillery, which was in use until about 1902, 1903. And then it was saved from being scrapped by John Grant back in the 70s. I can't quite read the label there. Maybe you guys can have more luck than I can. But interesting that they were able to salvage this still from a ghost distillery, the Leith Distillery, and they popped it in their visitor center. The picture of the bottle there, that is the Spirit of Speyside bottling that they released. And the distillery center has quite a unique feel to it, with that kind of like tartan clad sort of flooring, the wood ceilings. Very interesting. Their tasting room is actually using the wooded panels from a dining room on a former ship. So really interesting, unique um, spot to go ahead and visit. So definitely had to go ahead and and just take a quick stop at the Glenfarclas distillery. We passed so many distilleries cutting through the space side. It was tough not to stop every few minutes, but we needed to make time and get back to Edinburgh because we had to drop off a rental car. One of the last stops we made was at the gorgeous Blair Athol distillery. That was quite the I saw this comment pop up about Glenfarclas. Glen Sumi. Yes. Was it Decadent Drams whiskey sponge that released a whiskey called Glen Litigious? Yeah, phenomenal. Blair Athol. The ivy growing on the face of on the facade of the distillery It's just gorgeous. It's a stunning looking distillery, and yes, another happy man. You're right, Greg. Really cool. This is one of the Diageo distilleries that did not feel hollow and empty when I walked into it. It hadn't had its spirit ripped out. Um, Lagavulin was actually, funny enough, in the same vein. Lagavulin still had like this humble whiskey distillery feel to it, old school feel to it, and it was actually welcoming. Blair Athol was also welcoming in the visitor center in the courtyard. We got there quite late, so we didn't go to the bar, but very cute place, as Greg has said in the chat. They had this X Red Wine shaved toasted recharred, I believe, X Red Wine and fill distillery bottle. I think it was also 11 years old and nice whiskey. All the type of flavors you'd kind of expect with STR. So like red berries, caramels, toffees, kind of heavy on the dessert tones. Um, it was good whiskey, but again, it was like 135 pounds for a bottle, which I mean, that's like over $250 Canadian. I'm not paying that for 11-year-old or young Blair Ethel from STR red wine cask. Just not. So I think be careful what you go and pick up from a Diageo distillery. It just seems like they are overpriced for visitors, whereas Springbank was fantastically priced for visitors. Ardnamurchan, fantastically priced for visitors. So yeah, be careful with those ones. But a lovely distillery. I have a new appreciation for Blair Athol after seeing it myself. Would go back to go and do a tour. I would think. Back to the comments here. Whiskey Mechanic. I love Mikel Tour. The original was my bottle of the year for 2024. I have the sherry and the turbo. I haven't opened them yet. I've had the turbo. Turbo's excellent. It's just like the sherry on steroids. I did think that the original was the most well balanced of the crew. But if I'm at a shelf and I see all four there, I'm taking the turbo. Don't know when I'll ever see one on a shelf. I don't think I will ever see one on a shelf, honestly. Uh, Sugar Kitty. I almost mentioned Blair Athol in with Dalyuan and Tininic. I used to buy regular releases of it back in the day, but that all stopped. Yeah, I'd love to be able to actually access the flora and fauna range here in Canada. They don't get shipped to Canada. You'd have to import them yourself, which can be a very expensive process. But um, all these underappreciated flora and fauna distilleries, they do make quite lovely whiskey. It's just whether or not you want to give Diageo your money. Sugar Kitty by the Indies. Yeah, I've got Old Gunzies. Is it Old Gunzies? Paolo Cortado or Amontillado Blair Athol. I've got the Blair Athol Bloody Sergeant from the Macbeth releases that Elixir Distillers did. Fond appreciation for Blair Athol for sure. And this, I believe, is the last slide for whiskey here, guys. And these are two of those Gordon MacPhail miniatures that I talked about, the Glen Calder blended Scotch whiskey and the Bladnoch 1993 23-year-old single malt. That Bladnoch was funky, fruity, delicious, fantastic single malt whiskey with a lovely oak influence. You could definitely taste that it was had a good age on it. Loved that. I bought 5 miniatures of those. They were 8 pounds each for the Bladnoch 23-year-old. I picked up 5. I brought 3 home with me because I drank 2 in Scotland. And the Glen Calder, I bought 2 of those for 6 pounds because I found it curious. And the tasting notes I had on the Glen Calder, because they don't make this anymore. The tasting notes I had were something around the lines of like orange, ginger, bit of like icing sugar, bit of confectionery notes, some I'd say, oh gosh, there was some like orchard fruits on it as well. A very approachable whiskey. I don't know how much it cost back in the day. I wouldn't buy more drams of it for 6 pounds a dram, but it was a well put together blended Scotch. So I'd happily have that return in a new form from the Gordon and MacPhail archives. If they found some casks of grain whiskey they wanted to blend with blended malt, I'm sure they could do a fantastic job. Sugar Kitty clarifying here, and I don't mean those were just the flora and faunas. They used to have real regular releases, particular Blerethol. Ah, okay. Yeah, they just bury so many of these lovely distilleries in ways where we don't get to fully appreciate them unless we invest heavily in independent bottlings. So that really is too bad. So those are the whiskeys of my trip, guys. I have had a fantastic time in Scotland, and thank you for joining me to actually go through all these whiskeys. I do have one more whiskey I would like to talk about, though, that I kind of um, I referenced at the beginning. So what I might do is I might just go ahead and make some space here for one of the whiskeys that I poured for my wedding guests. And that would be that Portiskeag 25-year-old that, again, for some reason, is still available off the shelf here in Canada at a really reasonable price. Actually, I'm going to leave the box on the ground. You guys saw the box earlier. So the Portiskeag 25-year-old is Kalila single malt, 3,000 bottles, bottled in 2019, 45.8% ABV. I have one Glencairn left. We'll pour a little bit in there. And we'll wrap up the comments section and have a good rest of our Sundays here. Just a touch of that. As I said, my guests tore through this bottle. It's down to here. I'll try to do a proper review before this bottle goes flat because the fill level is quite low. I might need to pour that off into another bottling just to keep it. But it is just such a lovely nose. It's gone more fruity after 25 years. There's still that lovely citrus zest that you get on so many of these heavily peated whiskeys. But there's a herbaceousness too. It's going more on thyme, for instance. If I went out into my herb garden, I could probably go through a few of them, but this would be the closest. And that peat is just, it's very measured, a little bit on tar, bit of creosote, but like less smoky and just more earthy. Really is a lovely whiskey. I think if you see this, if you're in Alberta, you see this for under 300 or around $300. I think you're in a good place to pick that up. I think there's some other bottlings of Kalila from Gordon MacPhail that are in around the same price point too. Also great. But I have high confidence in any of these older elixir bottlings. I like that. Herb and Pete. Those are nice guys right there. All right, I'm going to take a sip of this. Mm. Gorgeous old malt. Mm. That is a glass you can sit with for a real long time. And it fit the bill for something special to pour for special guests on a special day. Oh, I'm going to be tasting that peat smoke and that finish for a good 10-15 minutes. Fantastic stuff. Again, all the confidence in Portiskeag, Elixir Distillers. They do great stuff. Funny enough, after having tasted those cask strength single cask samples from Isla Harris, on the nose, there was actually a similarity to those samples with that clear malt character, the kind of like pear apple notes. and the peat just kind of in the background, much more peat on this, but it is tamed down in a way that is oddly reminiscent of those single casks. I'm a big fan of the Isle of Harris distillery. I'm a big fan of all of the whiskeys I brought home. Um, I think I'm very lucky to have had another opportunity to go back to Scotland. As I said, we didn't think we'd have another chance to. So we're very, very blessed and very thankful for all that brought us back to Scotland. And I'm very thankful and I feel very blessed to have people like you joining me today on this live stream, Whiskey on the West Coast. And some of the people that help keep the channel going are people like our Patreon subscribers. So, Patreon members, thank you so much for supporting the channel in the way you do. And I hope to have more reviews and more videos coming in the near future. As I said, for July 1st, I hope to have um, a Canada Canadian whiskey related content because we are on Canada Day. So that would be great to do. But outside of that, guys, I want to spend more time now that the wedding planning is over. More time getting back into the channel, doing videos, catching up with you folk, and sipping good whiskey. So we'll check in with the comments once more, and we'll say good night or good day wherever you are. Michael Torres, awesome live, Matt. First time catching it live. You nailed it. Have a great night. Thank you, Michael, so much for sharing your day with us. Greg, very cool live show as always, Matt. Thanks for sharing all these memories with us. Thanks for joining, Greg. As always, you're such a encyclopedia of whiskey knowledge. You always add a lot to the fray here, buddy. Michael, amazing content as always. You really bring it to life with your interactions and charisma. I hope you keep that style going. Thanks, Michael. Those are very kind words. Kirby, thanks again, buddy. Thanks for joining me, bud. I'll see you in the chat there, and I look forward to those Living Souls bottlings landing here in Canada. Sugar Kitty, Slanjavar, thank you so much for joining Sugar Kitty. It's Canada Day. Yeah, for Canada Day, eh? Peter White, cheers all. Sugar Kitty, remember to lick the like and like the lick. That is a classic Sugar Kitty trope. Thank you so much, guys. From the West Coast, until next time, cheers.